Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called The Villainous Princess Wants to Live in a Gingerbread House. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! We are introduced to Princess Anastasia, a cute pink-haired little girl, as she enters a huge room full of judging eyes staring at her. She gets close to a pool full of water and dips a toe in, wishing she could go back to her family, or as she's already at the palace, at least get some chocolate treats. Anastasia has a flashback to when she was back home with her parents, a gorgeous pink-haired woman who's keen to hand labor and a blonde man who seems more prone to cooking. They were really poor, living in a broken-down house in the outskirts of a rural village. Nonetheless, Anastasia is dearly loved by her parents, as they did their best to give her the best life they could, sacrificing their own comfort to favor her own. Her parents are also quite particular in comparison to other commoners, as her mother has a talent for swordsmanship and her father was a painter and a musician in their spare time. Moreover, Anastasia has reincarnated into this life, so she doesn't have any friends her age, for she considers them to be too immature. One afternoon, a group of knights came to their house, and immediately her father picked up Anastasia and escaped through the back door with her as her mother fended them off with her sword. Unfortunately, they were stopped again, and the knights had gotten a hold of her mother. Anastasia cried out for her, as the knights announced that they were there to escort her, a princess, back to the castle. Presently, she's attending a spirit ceremony, an ancestral ceremony in which a spirit and a human make a contract. She's frightened as she finally starts tying two and two together, realizing she's reincarnated into the villainess of a novel she's read more than 10 years before her death, so she doesn't remember much about the events. She remembers that the story centers around one of the grandchildren of the emperor, Alexei, and a normal girl who fall in love and have to face a lot of obstacles to be together. Anastasia, Alexei's cousin, is one of those obstacles. She acquired a very strong spirit, so strong she even became a contender for the throne. She'd grown up poor because of her father, Prince Yuriev, had contracted a weak spirit and had had to leave the Imperial family. So once she got a strong spirit, she made a lot of reckless decisions that led to her downfall. Our main character is completely appalled. She only wished to fulfill her dream of being a baker in this new life, but she sees that it won't be as simple as planned. The ceremony begins once Alexei and the Emperor enter the room. It's finally time for Anastasia to go to meet her spirit, and we return to the initial scene of the story. She submerges herself in the pool, hoping to get a normal spirit so she can return to her rural life. However, she's met with a glowing and powerful bird spirit, which can transform into different things and ends up becoming a pin on her dress. She exits the room and is asked by a maiden what her spirit is, but she lies and tells her she doesn't know. However, the maiden goes to fetch Marquis Serenetev, who contracted with an insight spirit. Marquis Serenetev, or Maxim, has arrived to determine Anastasia's spirit. Once he approaches her and touches her forehead, he's faced with a blinding golden light coming from her. But he says she's been blessed with a small bird spirit. Anastasia's relieved but confused at the same time, not knowing why he's covering for her. The Emperor then talks to each child, and when he reaches Anastasia, he's surprised to see how small and skinny she is for her age. Anastasia feels as though he looks at her with a distant look, but he's surprised once Anastasia tells him she's eager to return to her home. He then leaves, but Anastasia still can't return home. She's staying in the Imperial Palace and being looked after by a personal maid, Lise. She's really kind to Anastasia, trying to comfort her about having to stay there by telling her her parents will arrive soon. She's trying to get Anastasia to go to sleep, telling her the faster she sleeps, the faster she'll meet her parents, as they have at least 5 days of travel from their village to the palace. Anastasia fakes going to sleep, as she doesn't want to trouble Lise anymore. And so Lise goes to help with the preparations for an upcoming banquet to celebrate the end of the war. She leaves, but Anastasia is left concerned after being told that Karnov Neustadter, Alexei's closest ally, will be attending said banquet. Anastasia remembers Karnov clearly from the novel. He's Alexei's closest friend and successor of the Neustadter family. He had a chance at the throne, but he gave it up to support Alexei, and ever since, every win he's had at war, he's accredited to Alexei and the crown. Moreover, Anastasia remembers how her character crossed paths with him plenty of times, and he was one of the main causes of her death. Therefore, Anastasia hopes she's long gone from the Imperial Palace before he arrived, so that they don't even have to cross paths once. Suddenly, her spirit appears in the form of a chick, and it nudges her to get out of bed and follow it. Confused, she's dragged by the hem of her nightgown by the spirit to the royal kitchen, where it spreads out cake ingredients before her. She's dumbfounded, but then remembers she wished to be able to have some cake when she was receiving the spirit, but she lashes out at the chick, afraid she'll get caught where she shouldn't be. She planned on not getting any attention, but thinking she'll never be able to use such high-quality ingredients ever again, she decides to give it a try and bake some cookies. Nonetheless, she's caught by the kitchen's head chef, who's furious at her and doesn't even let her finish telling him who she is before he yells at her to get out. The spirit then goes into action, attacking the chef and leaving him defeated on the ground. Anastasia takes this chance to negotiate with him, telling him she'll leave quietly if he lets her bake something, and he agrees to do so as long as she cleans up and keeps the chick in place. Anastasia starts ordering Pavel, the head chef, around the kitchen as if it were her own. He tells her he can teach her how to cook, but she simply sends him to boil some water as she heard he doesn't handle snacks, leaving him discouraged. After seeing her struggle cracking the eggs, he goes to her aid, also criticizing her choice of using chocolate as it's not a popular ingredient there due to its bitterness. Nonetheless, she brushes him off and continues to order him around while making her recipe. Once the mixture is done and ready to go into the oven, she remembers she forgot to preheat the oven. Arrogantly, Pavel tells her that they keep the oven on 24/7 in the Imperial Palace as the oven uses magic stones as a heat source, and it would require an enormous amount of them to start it up if it were to be turned off. After they're done baking, the snack turns out looking extremely gorgeous, leaving Anastasia impressed at herself as if it's her first time making it. Pavel is also really amazed at her, as she made this elaborate dessert even though it was her first time working with cream and sugar. They try it and are completely taken aback by its deliciousness, and after being asked what to name it, Anastasia decides to call it Pavel Chocolat, making him blush. Both of them leave the kitchen to look for oranges to bake a cake when a butler arrives looking for a snack to give to the emperor. Pavel's not there, but he finds some ramekins with Anastasia's desserts, and thinking Pavel left them behind in case the emperor got hungry, he takes some to him. In his chambers, the emperor is meeting with Alexei and discussing war affairs, particularly talking about their win of the war against the Noctis elves. He then asks Alexei why he spared the life of a 10-year-old slave, reminding him his parents were executed for bringing darkness and communicating with the elves so no one in the north would take him on, even as a servant, nor adopt him. Then, Alexei looks troubled as the emperor suggests the child and Anastasia stay together. He tries to take the slave himself, but the emperor has already decided. It's then that the butler bringing in Anastasia's cake arrives, and they are immediately intrigued upon tasting it. Back in the Imperial kitchen, Pavel left Anastasia alone as soon as they returned and noticed that 2 of the ramekins were missing, and he left to go look for the cake thief. As she's waiting for him there, the butler barges in looking for Pavel in a hurry because the emperor has asked to speak to him after tasting Anastasia's cake. The butler is horrified as soon as he heard that Pavel didn't make the snack, as he thought it had been prepared for the emperor. And now the emperor is looking for the one who made the cake. Anastasia asks him if the emperor looked angry or upset, but the butler couldn't tell. So, afraid Pavel will get punished for something she baked, Anastasia tells the butler she's the one who baked the cake and tells him to take her to see the emperor. Once in the emperor's parlor, she admits to having baked the cake he ate as he looks at her with stone-cold eyes. Anastasia explains to him that she insisted Pavel let her to bake in this kitchen, as she wanted to make something for him before she left the Imperial Palace to return home. The emperor asks if her father taught her how to cook, but she tells him she never baked before as they were too poor, although she has a baking book with pictures she studied every day. He then asks her how she got the cake to have that color, when Anastasia notices like a colored aura around her grandfather. She answers that Pavel got some chocolate from Baron Saratov, so she used that. Anyhow, the emperor tells her that he'll be giving her a gift that'll be arriving in a few days. But Anastasia, not wanting to gather too much attention, tells him Pavel helped a lot and that she'll be returning home soon. Anastasia also notices the emperor's shawl shift, seeing an opaque thing coil around him. After Anastasia is escorted out of his room, the emperor starts talking to his spirit, Shamal, asking if Anastasia saw it. Shamal tells the emperor he was curious about her, so he got close, as she doesn't appear to be interested in the emperor at all and wants to return home most of all. This trait reminds the emperor of Uriel, his youngest son and Anastasia's father, who ran away from the palace. After being asked, Shamal tells the emperor Anastasia contracted the small bird spirit, even though he doesn't seem too convinced about it. Back in her room, Anastasia hears a voice talking back to her. It's the chick, her spirit, who finally introduces itself as the Great Sensory Spirit. Shocked, Anastasia asks the spirit why it hasn't spoken to her up until now, and annoyed, he tells her it's because she was too weak herself. Then, she asks him if he's the reason why she's been starting to see colors around people, and excitedly, the spirit tells her that those colors represent people's emotions, and that is one of many abilities she's gained from him. Stunned, Anastasia floods him with questions about how to use this ability, but the spirit cuts her off and tells her he doesn't know. Anastasia accuses the spirit of not knowing the answer she needs, but the spirit simply states that he doesn't need to know them and it's up to her to find them out, telling her that he's the reason she baked such a good cake in the kitchen, as the spirit can do anything that requires the senses. Excitedly, Anastasia informs him she'll be using him as a recipe book, saying how she'll use the Imperial kitchen 10 more times before leaving the palace. The spirit tells her her ambitions are too low, but she explains that the only way to stay in the palace is to contract one of the spirit kings like the Emperor or Alexei did. But her spirit huffs, telling her how their spirits always come to him for help. He then tries shifting into his full form again, but is dismayed to see he can't. Next morning, Anastasia's room is really hot and her spirit tells her it's the fault of Alexei's spirit, the fire spirit Fafnir, who can't control his power. She then shares some brownies she baked with her spirit, telling it she'll call him Phoebe, annoying him and leading him to start pecking at her. Anastasia grabs Phoebe and shakes him up, trying to get him to calm down, and demands that a set of rules are laid between them. She tells him that when he's in the form of a bird, he has to act like one. He has to transform into only that type of bird, and he can't tear her clothes. In reply, he asks her to never shake him again, and she has to bake sweets and give them to those around her every day. She tells him she can't do that every day as she's not allowed in the Imperial kitchen, but he protests, telling her that eating her snacks will help humans communicate with their spirits. She still doesn't understand her spirit's plan, but he insists it's all for her own good. Right then, Lisey comes into her room and without being able to contain her excitement, tells her the Emperor has decided to have her stay in the palace to receive an education until she becomes an adult, which devastates Anastasia. Lisey gets her all dressed up, telling her she'll go prepare her permanent room, which is situated right next to Alexei's. Anastasia tries hiding her disappointment to not trouble Lisey, but once Lisey is excused, she goes for a walk around the premises. Outside of the palace, she sees one of the other Imperial grandchildren who received the rainwater spirit throw a fit while being kicked out of the palace in place of her. He's furious, and the moment he sees Anastasia, he starts charging towards her. Not knowing what to do, Anastasia literally feeds him one of her brownies, leaving him perplexed. The staff then come running towards them, asking them if they're okay. Dmitri, the boy, is stunned, demanding to know what she fed him. She boasts it's a sweet she made that was complimented by the Emperor himself. And after Dmitri gets flustered after she insists on giving him more, he calms down. Anastasia is trying to help him get a hold of himself as his father, Maxim, always helped her family when in need. Dmitri stashes the brownie she gave him in his pocket, and she asks him to share some with Maxim when he returns home. Anastasia noticed that Dmitri calmed down pretty fast after she gave him her brownie, and Phoebe explains it's because her sweets have the power of improving people's moods. Lisey then hurries there with a purple aura of worry around her, asking if she's okay. Anastasia tries assuring her nothing happened, but Lisey's aura changes to crimson once she sees the staff that were present while Dmitri lunged at her, demanding to know why they didn't stop them. Nonetheless, Anastasia manages to calm her down and convinces her to go show her her new room. Once in the room, Anastasia's stunned by how spacious and luxurious it is. She's even more stunned to see a door connecting her room to Alexei's. And Lisey tells her that Alexei really wants to get close to her and asked for them to study together. Anastasia doesn't understand why her cousin wants to take classes with her, as she's really far behind compared to him. She enters the study to find him reading a book, feeling as though he's acting cold towards her. She tries addressing him by his title and even their heir familial relationship, but he's turning down everything she says until she directly calls him Alexei, making him shift and blush in surprise. Finally, she settles on calling him Alyosha. Their tutor then comes and they start studying, but as each has their own things to read, they don't speak at all, leaving Anastasia to wonder why he wants her there. She returns to her room, frustrated at the whole situation, and telling Phoebe Alexei dislikes her. She has a small box with some jewelry she's picking up in order to sell to get money to run away, but she doesn't even know where her home is. Phoebe tries calming her down, telling her that Dmitri dislikes her, but he's not sure about Alexei. And remembering how she handled the situation with Dmitri, Anastasia gets the idea to gain Alexei's friendship by baking him some sweets. She goes to the kitchen where she meets Pavel, and after some convincing, he lets her stay and practice cooking in his kitchen. He clearly has no idea she's an Imperial grandchild, but she prefers it that way. Anastasia asks Pavel if there's any chocolate left over from yesterday, but he shyly admits he spent the night experimenting with it, so there's none left. After some thought, she decides she'll make something savory this time, asking him to give her cheese and bacon. She's trying to make some salty scones, but she needs some leavening agent in order to make them, and it yet doesn't exist at that time. Nonetheless, she remembers that baking powder can be made using baking soda found in stomach medicine of the time, tartaric acid, and starch powder in a ratio, Phoebe tells her. Thus, after making the baking powder, naming it Phoebe powder, she bakes the bacon and cheese scones, surprising even herself after seeing how well they rose in the oven. Pavel tries them and is moved by how delicious they are, even though Anastasia looks a bit concerned as she tells him they're for her cousin who grew up eating only the most exquisite foods. Pavel finds it strange that her cousin apparently grew up so rich and she is so poor, but he doesn't ask about it and rather assures her awkwardly and blushing that her cousin will love the scones. Thus, Anastasia wraps them up excitedly, satisfied with her plan to win her cousin over. Anastasia thinks that maybe she can start selling her baking powder in the kingdom, which will make her rich and able to afford a big house where her parents won't have to worry about her anymore. She thinks she'll have to open a factory, but she's trying to figure out how to get the funding she needs in order to do that. She quickly snaps out of it though, wanting to focus on adapting to the Imperial Palace first. She knocks all day long at Alyosha's door, meaning to give the scone to him, but he never answers. Late at night though, one of his guards answers for him and informs Anastasia he's busy studying. A bit disappointed, she gives the guard the scones and asks him to give them to Alyosha for her. Alexei's a bit surprised after receiving the scones from the guard, but he decides to have a try of it right then and there. He recalls how ever since contracting the Fire Spirit King, he's never been able to make friends or have a normal family, as everyone looked at him with jealousy, fear, and flattery. However, he saw something different in Anastasia's eyes and hopes to be able to befriend her. He tries the scone and is delighted by it, still not knowing she made it for him herself. A week later, it seems Anastasia's been giving him snacks every night through his guard Cyrillic, and she feels as though she is improving her relationship with Alyosha. This night, she goes to their connecting door to give Cyrillic the snacks as usual, but freezes on the spot when she sees Alyosha opening the door. He greets her warmly, but she's too stunned to speak. However, she snaps out of it once he grabs her hands. Alyosha playfully reprimands Anastasia for always asking Cyrillic to deliver her snacks to him for her. But stammering, she tells him it's because she doesn't want to disturb his study sessions. However, he insists, asking her if it's because she doesn't like him and even calling her a small p. Finally, telling her that it wouldn't be a bother at all to spare some time for her. Completely flustered, Anastasia tells him she doesn't want to play with him, breaking his spirit a little bit. But she hastily corrects herself, saying it's that she just wants him to enjoy the snacks and smile because of her a little bit. He replies by saying he always smiles when he sees her, but being brutally honest, she tells him she wants him to smile genuinely. After that, she completely shies away, scurrying to bed and leaving him behind with some more scones. While watching him train archery, Anna wonders when Alyosha takes a break, as he's constantly occupied. She comes across Cyrillic and asks him why he's not guarding Alyosha, who tells her it's because during the day, the fire spirit, Fafnir, is strongest, so he doesn't need any protection. Anna then asks him why Alyosha needs to train so hard if he's so protected, but the training is mostly for him to be able to control the power of Fafnir. She then gives Cyrillic some scones she made for Alyosha, telling him to take one for himself. He's surprised to learn she's been making these snacks herself, asking her if she likes Alyosha. She's a bit hesitant on what to answer, as she's convinced he doesn't like her back, but eventually she admits she doesn't dislike him, and she'd like to spend time with him as he's the only family she has around. And Cyrillic confesses that it's the same way for Alyosha. A week later, Anna is watching Alyosha train again and he offers to teach her. But the string is too hard for her to pull, making him tease her while she protests. In a more serious tone, he asks her if she doesn't feel too hot while being around him, as that's a consequence of Fafnir. In truth, it's because Phoebe's stronger than Fafnir, but not wanting to make him wary about her, she simply says it's because his power won't hurt allies. Alyosha's a bit confused, but Aisha insists, telling him it's like that in all the novels. He smiles at that wholeheartedly, which makes Aisha really excited to see. He's trying to cover his face up though, but she's pulling at his arm to reveal his smile, ultimately annoying him and leading him to push her to the ground. Aisha's shocked, not hurt at all, but never expecting that from him. He's even more terrified, trembling, but hastily turning away from her and apologizing. She asks him why he's angry at her, and he replies by telling her that he can't be angry while walking away. She runs after him, trying to understand why he can't show his emotions, and he tells her it's because of Fafnir. Until he becomes strong enough to control his power, he has to manage his emotions carefully to not cause an accident. Anna remembers from the novel that was the reason he went looking for the heroine, who had stabilizing powers. Once Alyosha leaves, Phoebe tells Anna that his reasoning is foolish, as the reason he's emanating heat is because Fafnir is excited, not because of his own emotions. Worried for him, Anna asks Phoebe what she can do to help him, and apart from giving him the snacks she makes, he tells her she can stay by his side and support him. Thus, Anna rushes to Alyosha's room and barges in. Not being able to hold it in anymore, Anastasia explains to him that it's Fafnir who can't control his emotions, particularly his excitement, and that's because he's radiating heat. She assures him that Fafnir wouldn't have picked him if he didn't think he was strong enough. She insists that it's safe for him to show his emotions, making him notice how nothing bad happened after he got angry at her, so there shouldn't be any issues in the future. Soberly, and with a blue cloud of sorrow enveloping him, he confides in her that the previous contractor of Fafnir had been his father who died when he was only 5. Supposedly, he was a person of intense emotions, which led him to lose control of Fafnir's power and die. Aisha remembers what actually happened to his father from the novel, and it's nothing like what he's saying. In fact, he used to be a sensitive man, and so the emperor didn't think him fit to be the king, while her father, the youngest prince, hadn't signed a contract with a spirit king, but was the smartest one, so the emperor wanted to make him future king. However, as soon as Nikolai, Alyosha's dad, came to know this, he became so sorrowful he threw himself into the pit of flames, and Aisha's dad left the palace after this. The emperor then kicked all the princes out and hurried Alexei's spirit ceremony, and after he contracted Fafnir, he appointed him crown prince. Aisha's trying to convince Alyosha that nothing bad will happen if he lets himself feel his emotions. When he starts crying, Aisha then jumps into his arms, hugging him tightly to let him know it's okay to feel his emotions around her. After that, Alyosha got an incredibly high fever. Trying to help him, Aisha goes to his room at night. There, she's surprised to be able to hear Fafnir speak to her. Phoebe gets annoyed at him, telling him not to speak to his contractor, but he's desperately trying to seek help to get Alexei to feel better. Apparently, he can talk to her thanks to the power she got after contracting Phoebe. And after some talk, she demands Fafnir to speak to Alexei to inform him that the reason it's always so hot is his own fault and not Alexei's. She then rushes to the kitchen to prepare a snack that'll help him get better. As medicine won't work on Alexei because of Fafnir, Aisha decides to make something for him that'll help him get better, assured by Phoebe that her snacks will work on him. She comes across Pavel in the kitchen, where she tells him that her cousin is sick, so she's gonna make something for him to feel better. She decides to do a ginger cordial, which is a concentrate made of fruits and sugar with boiled pears. She's gonna add cinnamon to the cordial as well, as it's good for colds, even though she really hates it. She then asks Pavel if he shouldn't be heading home already, but he says he'll stay as he's never seen anyone make ginger cordial before. Aisha apologizes for making him stay overtime, but he just laughs and pats her head. After the cordial is done, Phoebe tells Aisha to add milk to it as its taste is too strong. And the end product is so delicious she can't believe it contains cinnamon. She then rushes to Alyosha's room to give it to him, and luckily he appears to be awake. She goes to his bedside and makes him drink the cordial and apologizes for the creepy look the pears have, even though she tried making them cute. Surprised, Alyosha asks her if she made it, and she tells him she did, even showing him a cut she got while cooking and encouraging him to eat more to get better, feeding him the pears like a baby. However, he can't have more than a bite as he feels so bad, so Aisha helps him back into bed to sleep. The next morning, he's shocked to see Aisha fell asleep on his bedside. Concerned, Alyosha wakes Aisha up and asks her if she stayed there all night, but without skipping a beat, she asks him if he's feeling better, checking his temperature. She then gives him more of her ginger milk, telling him she stayed there because she was worried his fever would rise, and admitting she'll probably skip that day's classes because she's really tired. Shyly, Alyosha then asks her if she's hurt from when he pushed her, which reminds her that Fafnir has to speak to him to apologize for his actions. Aisha grabs a candle and demands Fafnir to give Alexei an apology, and even though Aisha can see and hear him apologizing, Alyosha doesn't seem to be able to hear anything, making Phoebe laugh at Fafnir. Confused, Alyosha asks Aisha if she can speak to spirits, and after some hesitation, she admits she can. Phoebe tells her that to get Alyosha to hear his spirit, she has to continue feeding him her food. After Alexei asks her what Fafnir said, she tells him about his apology. Alexei then asks her why she never told him she can speak to her spirit, and shyly, she says she didn't think anyone would care, and is cut off by him before she can tell him she doesn't want the throne. He seems very understanding, and later, once she's already left the room, Phoebe tells her that one of the powers she has is to be able to express truths without any misunderstandings, as long as she keeps feeding people her food. Sometime later, Aisha is waiting at the tea table for Alyosha to return from speaking with the Emperor when she finds a book talking about a place named Lumen Vasilise, and Phoebe informs her that there's a mine full of diamonds there. In his office, the Emperor is discussing the reinstatement of a former knight leader, Terji Nilin, after being 10 years off duty. The Emperor is asking Alexei for his opinion on whether to reinstate him or not, and Alexei reminds his grandfather of how loyal he was to him while fighting with him to secure the northern border, so he believes it'd be good to have him back. The Emperor then informs Alexei that Terji is actually the father of Aisha's mother, as Aisha's father married her 10 years ago and they fled together, making Terji disown her as well. Alyosha still insists on reinstating Terji, telling his grandfather it will help them with their negotiations with the elves, and his grandfather accepts his decision, even though he's a bit hesitant on his motives. Alexei returns to having tea with Aisha, and he tells her that he's trying to choose a land to take from the elves, as they're going to give it to them for having lost the wars. Aisha knows Lumen Vasilise has precious stones thanks to Phoebe, but she doesn't want to raise any suspicions towards herself for knowing that. Thus, she slyly suggests he takes that land, as Alexei himself said that all lands appear to have the same benefits. He teases her about being able to talk to Fafnir, but in truth, he still can't communicate with his spirit. Moreover, there seems to be a victory ball coming up, and Alyosha tells the maid that he'll gift Aisha a dress for it. As a thanks to helping him choose the land, Alyosha tells Aisha he wants to gift her another thing, and as it's impossible for her to return home, the next best idea that comes to her mind is to ask for a birdcage. As they enjoy some scones she made, Alyosha also informs her about the reinstatement of Terje. She doesn't seem to know he's her maternal grandfather and is left utterly shocked when he tells her so. When Alexei was young, Aisha's father came to visit him at night to say his goodbyes, telling him sorrowfully that he won't be able to see him again because he cares for him deeply. Therefore, he's telling Aisha that her parents won't be able to come see her while she's in the Imperial Palace, and so she'll have to wait until the Emperor lets her leave to see them again. He explains that that's why he thought of bringing Terje back, as she'll be able to have some family close by in the meantime. However, Aisha doesn't seem to be too keen on the idea, insisting she has him as family and that as long as he's there, she won't be lonely, moving him deeply. However, he stops himself while reaching out to touch her, grabbing his arm while telling her that it's unavoidable that he comes now, so that if Terji makes her uncomfortable in any way, she should tell him. Some days later, the party of knights that defeated the Noctis elves arrived at the palace. Aisha's pretty nervous about meeting Karnov Nusdatter, as he's the one who killed her in the original novel, but Alyosha's pretty excited to see him as he's his only friend, telling Aisha he'll befriend her as well. The Emperor hears Aisha call Alexei Alyosha and asks about it, and she cutely explains that he wouldn't have her call him anything other than that nickname, even making Alyosha uncomfortable by forcing him to call her Aisha in front of the Emperor. Everything falls silent as the knights enter the throne room, and amidst all that, Pavel, who's in the crowd, sees Aisha sitting in one of the Imperial seats. She waves at him, thinking she'll have a lot of explaining to do later. After the knights introduce themselves, Aisha stands up to leave and let Alyosha and Karnov have a heart-to-heart without her interference. But she trips on her shoe and is caught from behind by Alexei right before falling. Alyosha then tells Aisha that he'll carry her to the palace if she's hurt, picking her up and carrying her around princess style. Aisha gets really embarrassed, demanding he puts her down, but he insists. That's when they come across Marquis Valery Shapiraquin, another one of their uncles. Alyosha's treatment towards him is ice cold, and Valery doesn't seem to like how close Aisha and Alyosha seem to be. His son Ilya is not present at the ceremony as he seems to be ill frequently. Moreover, Aisha remembers him from the original novel and remembers how he used to fill her character's head with manipulative gossip, so she wants to stay as far away from him as she possibly can. On the other hand, Valerie makes a comment to Aisha about calling Alexei Alyosha, telling her that she has to respect proper etiquette. This really angers Alexei, who harshly tells Valerie he has to respect etiquette towards him but not Aisha, making him even more displeased, and then leaves him standing there. As Alyosha carries her to the palace, Aisha feels true warmth from him. They are honestly so cute together. Later on, as Aisha and Alyosha are having tea, Alyosha confronts Aisha about her not wanting to attend the victory ball. In truth, it's because she's really afraid of talking to Karnov, fearing he'll hate her and want to kill her. But she simply says it's because she thinks it'll be boring. Right then, Karnov unexpectedly enters the room looking to chat with Alexei. But upon noticing Aisha is there, his face instantly turns stone cold. Phoebe insists to Aisha that she approach Karnov and go talk to him, even telling her to hug him, making Aisha become extremely confused. Karnov tells Alexei he has to speak to him privately, so Alexei excuses himself to Aisha for a bit while they go outside to speak. There, Karnov notices how much Alexei has changed and how he seems to be smiling more. He asks about Aisha, and Alexei explains to him that she's his cousin and was allowed to stay by the Emperor after she contracted the bird spirit. Karnov seems a bit wary of her, asking Alexei if she sees him as her only cousin, and Alexei tells him she does. However, he's worried people with ill intentions will start trying to take advantage of her once they learn she's so close to Alexei, so he asks Karnov for help in protecting her. After they return from their talk, Phoebe still insists to Aisha that she go talk to him, but after Karnov throws an icy look her way, she desists. It's finally time for the victory ball, and Lisey is helping a very reluctant Aisha to get ready. She insists she isn't going to go, but still, she's all dressed up and ready for the event when Alyosha goes to pick her up at her room. He convinces her to go in the end, but he's called by the Emperor before he can escort her there, so she ends up entering the ballroom alone. Actually, Aisha remembers from the novel that in that ball, her character made a lot of fake friends who only wanted to reap power off of her instead of actually helping her. So that's why she's so reluctant to go. Nonetheless, she enters the ball and everyone starts gossiping about her. That's until Karnov approaches to greet her, and everyone falls silent as it seems they are all fearful of Karnov. Phoebe starts playing matchmaker as soon as he sees Karnov approach Aisha, telling her to grab his hand and talk to him and even kiss him. He tells her it's for the best in the world, but she doesn't understand what he means, so she simply ignores him and greets Karnov as Lord. She becomes very uncomfortable as he stands next to her without even saying a word, so she tries making him go away by telling him Alyosha will soon come after speaking to the Emperor. He doesn't seem to care at all, but corrects her after she calls him Lord again, telling her that it's wrong for her to address the Crown Prince through a nickname, but refer to him through his honorary title. Then, he tells her it'd be best for her to leave the Imperial Palace as soon as she can, so that she doesn't attract any person that may try to use her to gain power. Aisha understands he's trying to protect Alyosha, but after he tries telling her to stay away from him, she snaps and confronts him without beating around the bush. She tells him that she won't befriend anyone other than Alyosha or him, even teasing him about becoming best friends with him if it'll calm him down. Annoyed, he tells her not to get close to him, but he has to leave her behind suddenly after a loud clash is heard from somewhere in the ballroom. It's then that Maxim appears, greeting Aisha from behind. He asks her about her time adapting to the palace, and she tells him she's fine because she has Alyosha. After he gifts her a headband, she asks him about his insight powers, remembering how he'd identified her spirit as a small bird spirit. Maxim admits to her that his power allows him to have good perception of the world, even if it may be wrong, telling her he did recognize a powerful spirit contracting her, but as he couldn't identify it, he said it was a small bird to buy her some time. It's then that Alexei appears, and with a gloomy atmosphere about him, he picks up Aisha in his arms, asking Maxim if he's been bothering her. Aisha's surprised but excited to see Alyosha, who's throwing daggers at Maxim with his eyes. Maxim protests at this, telling him how he's still acting cold towards him, but he notices how he should watch his words, as Alyosha seems very protective of Aisha. Maxim tries patting Aisha's head as a goodbye, but Alyosha quickly slaps his hand away, making the air tense between them. Maxim then tells Aisha he has something her parents sent to her from home, explaining how her father has his reasons for not being able to go see her in the palace. After a moment's silence, Aisha smiles warmly, telling him she knows and it's all right as long as they are well themselves. Maxim smiles and leaves, and Alyosha then takes Aisha out to get some fresh air and speak. He insists to her that anytime anyone makes her uncomfortable or bothers her, she can leave, asking her if she was waiting for him to come to her rescue. Aisha makes him note that she never asked him to rescue her, telling him no one bothered her, not even Valerie. She then reflects on Valerie's comment about her calling him Alyosha, and she tells Alexei he might be right. But Alexei immediately cuts her off, telling her that she should never call him Crown Prince and not to listen to Valerie. He then laughs at Aisha, and Aisha tells him she won't call him Crown Prince, but asks him in return to let her get away from the banquet. He immediately accepts, and so she scurries off away from the party. Karnov has been listening to all of this, and Alyosha asks him jokingly if Aisha cried after talking to him. Karnov remains sober, telling him she probably doesn't know what his spirit is. Alexei then asks him to go check if Aisha returns safely to her room, and reluctantly, he agrees. Afterwards, Alexei returns to the party. Anastasia then goes to the palace's kitchen to make something for herself as she's feeling hungry. She notices the kitchen's empty, so she figures everyone must be helping prepare the victory banquet in the main palace hall. Nonetheless, it's not long after that Pavel enters the kitchen, completely shocked to see Aisha now that he knows her true identity. He demands to know why she never told him she's the Imperial grandchild. But Aisha retorts that she tried telling him that the first time, but he cut her off before he had heard her full last name. Yelling, he then apologizes for his previous behavior, and Aisha cuts him off so that he'd finally shut up. After that, she asks him about the basket full of eggs he has, and he tells her he left the victory banquet because it was too boring, so his attendants gave him a basket of eggs they won't use in the banquet. Hungrily, Aisha then tells him she'll teach him how to make egg sandwiches. Thus, after they make the mayonnaise and prepare the sandwiches, they eat them together. Pavel is impressed at Aisha once again, asking her where she got the recipe from. She can't tell him from her previous life, so she lies and tells him she got it from a book. It's then that a gorgeous woman, Baroness Saratov, the one who gave Pavel the chocolate, comes into the kitchen to thank him for giving her product such a good and popular use. She thought she'd go bankrupt, but thanks to his cake, more like Aisha's cake, but oh well, she has a new business prospect and wants his help to train bakers into preparing it so that she can open a patisserie. Aisha looks at the contract but is not convinced by the offer of only 10 million karas and 30% of the profits. Aisha starts negotiating with the Baroness, telling her that without their chocolate cake, her southern trade route would go bankrupt, so she should be more generous with her offer. Aisha goes even further, telling her that without their recipe, her chocolate is useless and will not sell. Therefore, Aisha tells her that without her recipe, she's doomed, so she'll have to up her offer. The Baroness tries playing cocky, telling her someone else will replicate it. But Aisha reminds her that the only one who may know the ingredients apart from them is the Emperor, leaving her completely defeated. Thus, after some more negotiating, the Baroness ends up agreeing to give them 30 million karas and 50% of the net revenue of the cake. Completely defeated, she asks Pavel who the kid is, and is horrified to learn she's the Imperial grandchild. Blissfully, Aisha leaves the kitchen and is surprised to see Karnov waiting outside for her, and he tells her he'll escort her to her room. As they're walking there, Aisha asks him why he left the banquet, as it's mostly in his honor. But he blatantly says it's because he doesn't want to be celebrating how he killed thousands, adding that people's moods get gloomy once they see him and realize what they're really celebrating. They keep walking, and Aisha gives Karnov a sandwich. He accepts it, but doesn't eat it yet, so Aisha thinks of lending him the basket once he leaves her at her room. They finally get there, and Karnov hastily turns away to leave. But as Aisha's grabbing his sleeve to give him the basket, he slaps her hand away and throws her to the ground. Aisha is left stunned on the floor, but she's even more surprised to see how shocked Karnov looks, not being able to recognize the color of the atmosphere that's engulfing him. She stands up, telling him she intended to lend him the basket and apologizes if she startled him, but he simply helps picking up the broken sandwiches, saying it's fine. Aisha becomes really sad about it, and trying to hold back her tears, she excuses herself and goes into her room. Soon after, she falls incredibly ill. Alyosha goes to visit her, scolding her for having asked to leave the banquet earlier only to fall ill. He sits by her side, nursing her, and accompanies her until she falls asleep, telling her to get better soon so that he can give her another present. It's already been 3 days since the banquet, but Aisha's still ill. To her surprise, Karnov comes to visit her bearing a bouquet of flowers. Her maid seems extremely nervous around Karnov, making Aisha wonder why. He tells Aisha he came to see how she's doing and to apologize for his rudeness the other day, but Aisha appears to be quite mad at him. Remorseful, Karnov tells her that he'll help her in any way he can, and so, in a heartbeat, Aisha's already up and dressed, ready to go somewhere with Karnov. They're heading to the kitchen as Aisha asks Karnov to help her cook. She's still trying to tease him as a payback for pushing her the other day, so she convinces him to piggyback her all the way to the kitchen. Once on his back, she's surprised to see how strong he actually is, while he tells her he's instead surprised of how easily she'll give up her shame in order to inconvenience him. They're kinda cute together, not gonna lie. Once they arrive at the kitchen, Pavel is horrified to see Karnov entering alongside Aisha. He's so afraid of him he stutters as he speaks, telling Aisha he can help her in the kitchen so there's no need for Karnov to be there. Aisha insists, and so they all start making dacquoise together. They turn out beautifully, and Aisha offers Karnov some for him to try, but he still seems unwilling to try her cooking. However, after guilt-tripping him on having pushed her the other day, he agrees to try one. Aisha also offers Pavel some, but he doesn't seem too excited either. So Karnov takes it from Aisha's hand and excuses Pavel. Karnov wants to be alone with her to tell her what his spirit is so that she understands why everyone fears him. But before he can tell her himself, she interrupts him, telling him she knows he contracted the death spirit. This leaves him speechless, and Aisha can't understand the color around him. He can't grasp why she'd be so calm around him knowing that. Phoebe then comments to Aisha that he must have had a really hard life because of people's prejudices towards his spirit, telling her it's not even the death spirit he's contracted. Pavel returns with drinks for both of them, and after taking them from him, Aisha excuses herself and Karnov from Pavel, telling him something urgent came up. Then, Aisha tells Karnov to help her carry their cookies and their drinks as they take a stroll. As they're walking, Aisha asks Phoebe about Karnov's real spirit, and he tells her that he actually contracted the time spirit and not the death spirit. Realizing how alone Karnov must have felt while growing up because of everyone avoiding him due to his spirit, she looks at him in compassion and literally forces a cookie down his mouth. Her social skills always amaze me. She tells him she wants him to try what they made together, but he simply says he whisked the egg whites. But he tells her it's not bad. Then, Aisha offers him to take half the cookies, but he tells her she should take them all as no one would like something he made. Aisha tries convincing him that it's no big deal, but she knows that's not true. She remembers his tragic backstory from the novel, but never paid much attention to it up until now. So she bluntly tells him that they are just cookies he made with washed hands, so she doesn't see any issues there. Thus, she tells him to accompany her to her room so she can get some paper to wrap half of the cookies up for him. However, her ankle is actually really hurt, so she ends up being carried by Karnov the rest of the way while she notices him being surrounded by a blissful blue color. Back in his home villa, he's welcomed by his staff and parents, who all look terrified of him. His father tries scolding him for being late, but he's so frightened he's shivering and stammering. He pays no attention to him though, interrupting him to say that his grandmother is ordering them to return to the fief now that the war is over, and then leaving for his room. There, he lies on his bed and blushes while thinking of Aisha and her openness towards him. Aisha's quite bored while sitting before the Emperor in her room, when she catches a glimpse of the wind spirit and even pokes it playfully when her grandfather suddenly calls her. She's intrigued to see the Emperor surrounded by the color of worry as he asks her how she's feeling, and timidly, she tells him she's fine and offers him some of the cookies she made with Karnov. As he munches on one, she then expresses to him how the classes he's been making her take feel like they're more meant for Alexei than for her, asking him if she can learn something else. He tells her the classes are not only for Alexei, telling her she also has to learn to be able to handle the Empire's business. However, she tells him that rather than always worrying about the citizen's future, he should also worry about Alyosha, reminding him that he's in fact his grandfather and he's been alone and with no family ever since he was little. Finishing off by saying that focusing on her as a possible spare for Alyosha is not in his favor. After that, the Emperor asks everyone to leave him alone, and she tells him that he should look after and encourage Alexei more. It's then that he brings out an envelope from Baroness Saratov that was sent to her regarding their deal to sell the chocolate cake recipe. He tells her that he'll buy it from her himself for that same price, but rather than accepting, Aisha asks him what he wants it for. Not even letting him reply, she starts fantasizing about cooking together in the kitchen, telling him it'll be fine as they'll seem like grandfather and granddaughter playing together. He corrects her, telling her that they are in fact family, asking her why she calls him His Majesty rather than grandfather. He gets offended at her elusiveness and ends up giving her everything she asked for, but she cuts him off, telling him there's something else she wants. So he tells her he'll grant her wish only if she calls him properly. Aisha's quite lost at what the Emperor might mean, so she awkwardly bows to him while calling him his whole honorary title. A dark gray fog immediately engulfs him, and Aisha doesn't understand why he's not happy with her answer after he abruptly leaps. Girl, he just wants to be called Grandpops, please! She then receives the cage Alexei promised to gift her, but Phoebe doesn't seem satisfied with it. She tells him she'll have Lissay put a warm cushion in it, but after she teases him too much, he goes away offended. It's then that Lissay appears to change her ankle bandages. There's a knock at the door, and Lissay is shocked once she sees what's behind it. And once she goes to inspect what shocked Lissay so much, Aisha is so shocked herself that even she shuts the door closed. Apparently, the slave the Emperor had talked about with Alexei all that time back has finally arrived, and it seems he's a gift from the Emperor to Aisha for baking him the chocolate cake. Aisha's shocked at how a person can become a gift, but she can't refuse him as it's from the Emperor. Thus, she lets him in, but she notices that there's no color around him, as if he feels nothing. She asks for his name, and after he tells her they used to call him Trash, Aisha decides to give him a new name. She's trying to be friendly to him, but he's not responding at all. Finally, she kneels before him and takes off his collar, asking him if he'd like the name Ivan. He nods, and Aisha asks Lissay to prepare a warm bath and new clothes for him, then asking him to pick some flowers so they can arrange them together in the room. After they're gone, Aisha goes to the Imperial kitchen to prepare some apple jam cookies for Ivan. Just when she and Pavel are about to place them into the oven, Alyosha comes into the kitchen looking for her. As soon as Alexei enters the room, the candles become brighter because of Fafnir, as he's still trying to catch his attention by telling Aisha to talk to him for him. After noticing this, Alexei apologizes for Fafnir and proceeds to start teasing Aisha for having flour on her face. She asks him what he's here for, and he tells her he went looking for her to give her a present as well, but he instantly picks her up and sits her on the counter, checking on her swollen ankle and scolding her for coming to the kitchen to bake in spite of it. Thus, he makes her promise not to come into the kitchen to bake anymore until her ankle is healed. And even though he has offered some resistance by her, she finally agrees to stop him from teasing her further. There's a dark smoke coming from the oven, and it seems the cookies have burnt because of Fafnir, making Aisha really angry at him. Fafnir tries blaming the magic stones, but Aisha is furious, insulting him directly. Sweet Pavel tries to cover for Aisha as he doesn't know if Alexei knows she can speak to spirits, even less so if it's actually true. Nonetheless, he gives it his all to try to convince Alexei that Aisha's talk just now was child's play, and Alexei finally cuts him off, telling him he already knows about her ability, but congratulating him for being so trustworthy. Alexei then takes his leave, telling her he'll leave his guard by the door to take her back to her room. After he's gone, while they bake a second batch of cookies, Pavel asks her if she really can talk to spirits, and is amazed to see she can. Of course, Alexei made him promise to keep this between the three of them only. While being carried back to her room by the guard, he tells her everyone's pretty worried about her sprained ankle, and the reason Alexei actually went to visit her was to check if she was okay in the kitchen. She feels a bit guilty then, saying she'll apologize to everyone. Back in her room, Aisha gives Ivan the cookies she made for him, noticing also how he's so skinny, and his skin seems to be a pale shade of blue. It's just then that Alyosha comes in as well, looking to have tea with her while sharing the jam cookies she gave him. As they sit down, he asks her who the kid is, and she tells him it's Ivan, a gift from the Emperor to her. Worried for her, he tells her to tell him if anything happens, which leaves her a bit confused. Aisha then asks him if he was busy today, and he informs her that that's the last day he'll be able to rest, as he'll be preparing for the arrival of delegators from the Noctis Elves in spring. Therefore, he tells her he's arranged for Karnov to come every evening to play with her, making her anxious. On a different note, her parents' letter and her things from her home have finally arrived. In the letter, they tell her they won't be able to go to her for the time being, asking for her understanding. They also mention a musician that used to come to their home often when Aisha was living there named Arten Ivanov, telling her he'd play at the banquet receiving the Noctis Elves delegation so she can go to him to look for a familiar face. Finally, they tell her they love her very much and to stay away from the Emperor as much as possible. She replies to them, telling them about all the friends she's made, but referring to them in code, also mentioning all the things she's been cooking and how she's become close to Alyosha. Aisha's most excited to be able to finally get her recipe book back, dreaming of one day selling the recipes she's made to buy a big house to live in with her parents. Phoebe wakes her up in the middle of the night as he feels as though there's something dangerous in her closet. She finds it's closed with a lock and key, and after Phoebe's insistence, she opens it up, stunned to see a room and Ivan in it. As soon as he sees her, he kneels, but Aisha tells him it's not necessary. He tells her that the attendants told him this was his room, while Phoebe informs her, extremely agitated, that he's a Noctis elf, asking what he's doing there as they can't come out of the north. As Phoebe keeps looking at him, he notices he's not only an elf, but half human, half elf, and he becomes appalled by his existence. Aisha tells him it's not that deep, but he insists, insinuating it's sort of a natural aberration. He then senses Ivan has frastille inside of him. He explains a frastille is a fragment of the blade of sin, and there are 4 left in total in the world after a 5th one was destroyed. Adamantly, he tells Aisha they have to fix him. He explains that Noctis elves have the ability to cut out their emotions and thoughts, and he did just that to himself, but is now unable to return to normal. He's lost his ability to express and speak for himself, so Phoebe tells Aisha that they have to help him get back, so she has to feed him more of her baked goods and stay close to him. After that is dealt with, he'll take care of the fractilles lodged inside Ivan's heart himself. Aisha decides to start by improving Ivan's living situation, so the next morning she heads to the Emperor's office to have an audience with him. After waiting a long time, she's finally able to get to see him. She greets him and gives him one of her apple jam cookies, which he immediately eats half of. He looks both happy and disappointed after receiving the cookie, and Aisha's still unable to understand what upsets him about her. The Emperor then asks her what she wants, even referring to her cookie as a bribe for him. Aisha feels her grandfather's being mean to her, and so the Wind Spirit gives her some tips, telling her to call him something other than His Majesty. Finally, she calls him Grandpa for the first time, making him radiate a color of happiness. After she got her grandfather all prepped up, she makes a request to have Ivan become a commoner rather than a slave so that he can be her personal attendant. The Emperor looks intrigued by this, but he explains that not even commoners or knights can become attendants, also mentioning how Lysay used to be a friend of her mother's before she got married. She tries other proposals to elevate Ivan's statue, but they're all turned down, so she resorts to the old and trusty puppy eyes. Unable to refuse them, the Emperor agrees to make Ivan a commoner from now on. Aisha then jumps up in excitement, falling to the ground after hurting her ankle again, which causes the Emperor to jolt up in worry. She assures him she's fine, and the Wind Spirit talks to her again, telling her to come visit more often as her grandfather often misses her. Back in her room, Aisha is being scolded by Lysay for hurting her ankle again, and further so, for going to request something from the Emperor without consulting with her first. Lysay is even more surprised when she hears Aisha ask the Emperor to make Ivan a commoner, and her worry increases as Aisha tells her she wishes to move Ivan's room somewhere else, and let him learn something of his choice in the mornings. Aisha asks Ivan what he would like to learn, but he's still neutral on everything. So Aisha decides to have him learn swordsmanship, as she thinks that a healthy body will help heal his soul. Aisha then goes to the kitchen to tell Pavel her ankle is healed, but she finds him sitting in a cloud of gloom. She asks him what the problem is, and it seems that he has been put in charge of preparing the desserts for the reception of the Noctis Elves delegation. And it's the season of the year in which the Noctis Elves don't consume any products derived from cows, as their founding legend says that the first Noctis Elf got to the north while riding a sacred cow. Thus, without the possibility of using any dairy products, Pavel has no idea what to prepare for their desserts. Aisha helps him see the bright side, as she's sure that if he's able to make a great dessert, he'll become an even more renowned chef, assuring him that she'll help him by bringing an amazing recipe. Back in her room, Aisha's brainstorming ideas on dairy-free desserts. She then decides to investigate the Noctis Elves, and she learns they live around a basin named Yub-Wisan. Their leader is randomly selected, and they have a very close bond with nature. Noticing Phoebe's aggressiveness towards them, Aisha asks him why he dislikes them so much, and he says they've committed a sin by separating heaven and earth. Phoebe explains that originally, humans and spirits live separately. Humans living on Earth and spirits in the sky, but some humans and spirits had a different idea and decided to separate the Earth and the sky, so the spirits weren't able to rise up to heaven. It happened because some humans decided to use the spirit's powers to become owners of the land, becoming emperors. The sword that divided heaven and earth is the blade of sin, and the split ended up causing darkness to be created. This darkness and the blade of sin affected humans and spirits, and to stop it, they were able to break the blade into 5 pieces and seal the darkness in the north. Some humans and spirits had to take responsibility for looking after the seal that's keeping darkness away. But the conditions of the north are so harsh, humans and spirits ended up merging with each other, becoming Noctis elves. Their religion really glosses over their true origins, and Aisha wonders why they'd make up that story about the sacred cow that make them not have dairy products during Noctis. Finally, she comes to the conclusion that the elves must be lactose intolerant, thinking she'll now have to ask for Ivan's meals to not contain any dairy. Concluding their aversion to dairy cannot be helped, Aisha looks through her old recipe book and finally finds a recipe that doesn't contain any dairy. As she's rushing to the kitchen to share her recipe with Pavel, Aisha comes across Karnov and Gilhaman Elman Shirivra, the commander of the Northern War. She hides behind a wall as soon as she sees them, but is startled by Karnov leaning over her. After greeting them, she asks them what they're doing there, and after some bickering between Aisha and Karnov, the commander wisely decides to take his leave and leave the two of them alone. He knows what's up. Aisha then grabs Karnov's hands, making him nervous while she tells him about the ordeal with the desserts for the delegation. She then asks him to help her and Pavel in the kitchen preparing them, and after some guilt-tripping from Aisha, Karnov finally agrees and follows her to the kitchen. Karnov's convinced that he'll make Pavel uncomfortable by being there, but Aisha insists that if he wants to befriend him, they should spend more time together. Karnov then tells her that Sir Elman wants him to give a guest lecture at Vychegda Academy, and Aisha asks him why he doesn't want to do it. He tells her he's not looking forward to teaching a bunch of people who think they'll die if he dislikes them. Karnov then asks her why she's getting involved with Pavel's issues, and she admits she feels a bit responsible for Pavel being in that uncomfortable situation. Karnov corrects her, telling her that Pavel is actually the son of Duke Petrov, a noble that is extremely loyal to the crown. So Pavel most likely ended up responsible for the desserts because his father's political enemies, who dislike his loyalty, must have pulled some strings to make him look bad. This only fires Aisha up even more, as she now figures it's not only an offense against Pavel, but against the crown itself. So she decides to make a carrot cake and leave everyone wowed. However, even though she has the cake already planned out, the problem of how to decorate it remains, as they can't use whipped cream. Once they arrive at the kitchen, Pavel looks terrified to see Karnov once again. Aisha tells Pavel Karnov's come to help them in the kitchen, but he seems a bit reluctant to let him stay. Aisha notices Pavel's behavior and excuses herself and Pavel from Karnov a second while she scolds him for being so rude towards him and accuses him of discriminating against him because of his spirit. Therefore, she drags Pavel back to Karnov and orders him to apologize to him. Pavel tries apologizing, but he's so terrified of Karnov he can't utter a coherent sentence out. Aisha tries alleviating the situation by playfully poking Karnov's cheek, making him a bit flustered after telling him he can poke hers if she wants. This eases Pavel's tension, and he finally realizes Karnov's just another kid and apologizes normally, causing Karnov to become phased. Aisha shows Pavel the carrot cake recipe, but he explains to her that the cake might be too rudimental for the fine palate of the nobles, and might cause them to get offended as it's originally a cake invented by poor people. However, Aisha responds that it's a cake that'll surely be liked by the Noctis elves, as they like living humbly in nature. Karnov agrees with Aisha's points, but Pavel's worried the head chef will not allow it. Aisha's unfazed, saying she'll get the Emperor's and the Crown Prince's permission for the cake, which will oblige the head chef to accept it. Thus, the three of them get to work on the cake. Meanwhile, the main palace's head chef is talking to one of his sous chefs, who's expressing his worries regarding the dessert being placed in Pavel's care, as there are rumors circulating that Pavel didn't make the famously congratulated desserts, but rather, it was Aisha who made them. This outrages the head chef, as he won't believe a 10-year-old can outmatch his cooking. Moreover, the head chef also appears to be working with Valerie, as he took an interest in him and asked him to outshine Pavel no matter what. Back in Pavel's kitchen, Aisha asks Pavel if he can contact Baroness Saratov, as she needs something from her. Meanwhile, Alyosha's meeting with the commander that led the kingdom to their victory in the Northern War, congratulating him and thanking him for the hardships he endured in the north. Nonetheless, the commander tells him that there were no actual hardships, as the battle ended in less than 30 minutes thanks to Karnov's spirit. Originally, many thought the Emperor was mad for designating a 15-year-old boy for deputy commander, but they were shown wrong once witnessing his power. The 30 minutes were given by Karnov to allow the Noctis to retreat, as he then ended all of them by just raising his arm. Nonetheless, the commander's still a bit worried for Karnov, as he is in fact just a 15-year-old, so that's why he's been insisting him to become a lecturer at the Vychegda Academy. Moreover, the commander comments to Alyosha he's noticed Karnov becoming close to Aisha, noting she's the only person he's ever seen Karnov rush to see. Alyosha then tells him that he knows about this, adding that as she's his only cousin, he won't forgive anything or anyone who makes her cry. Aisha's thinking of replacing the carrot cake's typical cream cheese frosting with one made out of walnut butter and coconut cream. Nonetheless, there's not enough coconut cream to decorate the whole cake, so she thinks of making oat milk to make a sort of custard and add that to the coconut cream as well. As she doesn't like cinnamon, they bake 2 cakes, one decorated with cinnamon and one without. Pavel then asks Aisha why her recipe book is only filled with baking recipes, and she admits to him that she loves baking cakes. She explains that it's her way to show others her appreciation, much like some give out flowers. After the cakes are done, the 3 of them try them, and to Aisha's disappointment, the one with cinnamon is the most popular one. Aisha then thinks of giving some cake to Ivan for him to try, thinking maybe he can shed some light into the preferences of the Noctis elves. After trying it, Ivan becomes a bit distressed and even ends up with an upset stomach. This worries Aisha as she thinks there might be something wrong with the cake, but Phoebe tells her it's not his stomach that's sick, but rather the cake she made finally started awakening some emotions in Ivan. It seems the food Aisha makes is finally having an effect on Ivan, and Phoebe asks her if Ivan's been in fact eating the things she gave him previously, as it'd be odd that this was the first time they had an effect if he'd been eating them before. Karnov enters the room and asks Aisha why Ivan's there as soon as he sees him. She explains to him how the Emperor gave him to her, but it seems like Karnov knows him from his time in the north, but refuses to say anything about it. Karnov then tells Aisha to not get too close to slaves, but when Aisha asks why, Karnov dismisses it and changes the subject. Then, after Karnov refers to her as Your Highness, Aisha gets a bit mad, telling him to drop the honorifics and simply call her Aisha, and after blushing a bit, he agrees to call her that in private. In the main palace's kitchen, the main chef has just tried the carrot cake Aisha and Pavel made and is dismayed to learn that it is in fact delicious. Pavel's there as well, waiting for the head chef's verdict on the cake. The head chef is in distress as Pavel will definitely outshine him with that cake, and he can't refuse him as Alexei himself went to speak to him to tell him to leave the dessert in Pavel's hands. After Pavel asks the head chef how he liked it, he can't help but compliment it. Pavel is then honest with him, confessing that in fact the recipe for that cake was created by Aisha, disconcerting the head chef. Back in Aisha's room, Lisey is trying to bribe Aisha with a cute dress to convince her to attend the inauguration ceremony of the Knight Commander, her maternal grandfather. Lisey also tries tricking her, telling her they're just going to go for a walk, but she doesn't buy it. She tries the honesty tactic, telling her she may finally meet her maternal grandfather, but Aisha's not interested in meeting him, saying he had 10 years to see her before, so if he wants to know her, he can come and look for her himself. Thus, Aisha goes to read a book alone in the palace's patio when she's startled by Karnov, who appears behind her. Karnov has heard she refuses to attend the inauguration ceremony of the Knight Commander, and Aisha asks him if he won't go either. He tells her he'll just make everyone faint, and after calling her a little pea, Aisha starts protesting and lightly hitting Karnov when he grabs her hands and tells her he'll be really sad if he can't see her. Aww. However, Aisha misses the point entirely and tells him they'll see each other in the evening. But he protests, saying she's already asleep then. He insists, asking her why she won't attend the ceremony, and she jokingly replies that if she does, he'll kill her, which makes him worried. Nonetheless, Aisha knows that he didn't in fact contract the death spirit, but rather the time spirit, so she debates whether to tell him the truth. She decides not to, and instead tries convincing him that the reason why she's not going is not because of his spirit, but because of her grandpa, whom she doesn't want to meet. Aisha then asks Karnov if his grandparents will come too, and he tells her he has a grandmother in the Northern Territory, but is unable to tell her if the both of them are close or not. Aisha's all dressed up for the welcoming of the Noctis Elves delegation, but Phoebe is not happy at all that the elves, who he considers to be sinners, are coming. However, he calms down a bit after Aisha convinces him they've already paid for their crimes, and he agrees that the darkness in the north is more purified. Aisha then thinks of Ivan and if he'd like to see the other elves, but she figures he probably had a hard time in the north while being bullied for being a hybrid, and she also worries that once he regains his emotions, he won't be able to adapt to his new environment. Karnov, also dressed up, appears below her balcony. He tells her Alexei forced him to take her directly to the banquet hall, so he swiftly climbs up the balcony and lifts her in his arms, making her get all flustered while calling her my princess. Yeah. Once in the banquet hall, Lilamri, the leader of the delegation, introduces himself to Aisha, as well as introducing his assistant, Ati. Suddenly, Aisha then steps in between Ati and Karnov as they exchange some menacing looks between one another. Phoebe tells Aisha she doesn't need to protect Karnov as he's more than capable of protecting himself. But Aisha retorts by telling him Ati kept staring at him with ill intentions. Phoebe then tells her it's obvious Ati doesn't want to sign the peace treaty, so they should pay close attention to him and it would probably be wise to keep Ivan hidden for now. Alexei then tells everyone to start dining. It's finally time for dessert, and the head chef brings Aisha's cake in, leaving everyone dumbfounded when he tells them it's named Blumen Basilise, the same name of the land Alexei will be taking following their victory in the war. Aisha's desperate to solve the situation, so she stands up and starts blabbering on how the dessert is supposed to represent peace between their empires, referencing the white bird on top and saying the white cream is supposed to represent the eternity of Lumen Basilise. Well played, my child. She then goes on by saying that they didn't use any dairy products to respect their beliefs, finishing off by saying she prepared it herself with the help of Karnov. They all try it and are quite impressed and delighted with its taste, enlivening Aisha. After the banquet is done, Karnov and Lilamri have a talk alone on the balcony. Lilamri compliments the cake above all else and asks Karnov if he can get the recipe from the head chef. Karnov corrects him, reminding him it was actually made by Aisha, making the leader of the delegation horrified to know Karnov had a hand in making it. Back in the kitchen, Aisha's yelling at Pavel for the name their desserts had, telling him he should have asked her first and it could have ended in a disaster. She then calms down, telling him she's not mad at him as he probably was forced to go along with the name by the head chef. And Pavel tells her that's right, as he asks the head chef to name it because he probably would have named it after her. Aisha then tells him she has urgent work to do, as she wants to write down the carrot cake recipe to give to the delegation. Pavel protests, telling her she's giving away a recipe that's probably worth thousands of gold. However, he's then touched when Aisha tells him that she wants to give it to them nonetheless, as it might help build the peace and future friendship between the empires. Aisha also tells him she wants to prepare a special strawberry coconut milk tea for the delegation as well, to pair with her carrot cake. The delegation is surprised to see Aisha come to their quarters late at night. She tells them she came because Karnov told her they liked her cake, so she wanted to share the recipe with them, adding that she brought some tea she made herself. Lilamri then gives her a small package, telling her he brought it for her but didn't give it to her before because he thought it'd be too simple for her. She's really excited to receive this gift, so she immediately opens it and is happy to see a cute pair of ear warmers, and she puts them on right away. A few days later, Aisha's bedridden as she's become sick again. It seems that cooking drains her of her strength a bit, so after giving it her all in the preparation for the banquet, she's left like this. The emperor sent someone to see Aisha on his behalf, as he's in a political meeting and can't come himself. This person gives Aisha a music box with a glass ballerina on the emperor's behalf, boasting about the luxury of the artifact. It's then that Karnov enters her room, bringing a bouquet of flowers with him once again. The atmosphere instantly changes after his arrival, so Aisha gets everyone to leave them alone. Karnov tells her she was mean to rush the emperor's representative out like that after he brought her a gift, but she tells him she's afraid Karnov wouldn't be at ease. Finally, Aisha grabs his hands and finally decides to be honest with him about his spirit, hoping it would alleviate his struggles a bit. So, she looks him in the eyes and tells him that his spirit is not the spirit of death. Aisha tells him that his spirit is actually the time spirit, giving him a flower and telling him to hold it. He's amazed to see he was able to turn it back into buds, and Aisha looks at him earnestly while telling him his power can also bring back a life, not only take it. Karnov leaves then and starts experimenting with his newfound ability in the garden, while making new flowers bloom. Phoebe then tells Aisha that the time spirit is stronger than the spirit kings, although not stronger than himself, and so that's why he's so concerned she got close to Karnov in order to help him to be able to communicate with his spirit. Aisha's a bit confused, as she thought Phoebe could speak to other spirits without her being able to speak to them, but it turns out that after contracting with a human, he can only speak to the spirits she can speak to herself. Lisay then comes looking for Aisha as the emperor is waiting to meet her. Lisay takes her to a wing far away in the palace, where the emperor greets her. He asks his attendants to leave them alone, when he kneels and asks her since when she can talk to spirits, leaving her shocked. Aisha's terrified after being found out by her grandfather, but she decides to come clean with it and confess she can speak to spirits. She holds his hand and tells him Alexei knows about her ability. And she was planning to tell him, but she was afraid it would put Alyosha in an uncomfortable situation, as she doesn't want him to think she wants to take his place at the throne. The Emperor is moved by her loyalty to Alexei, but then changes the subject and tells her he actually called for her to give her a present as a thanks for her help in the peace treaty, showing her a brand new kitchen built for her own personal use. Aisha doesn't think her cold grandfather will give her an entire kitchen and thinks this is all a test. After finding what she thinks is the gift, a vase with a ribbon, she expresses her appreciation, only to be met with a disappointed look from the Emperor. He clarifies that he's giving her the kitchen and is amazed at how much Aisha likes it, even though it's not land or anything special. He then exits the room and talks with Shamal, his spirit, who knows that the Emperor did not let Aisha remain in the palace to make her a potential empress, but to be close to her since the first time they met, Aisha seemed to hate him. Despite the Emperor's denials, Shamal teases him, knowing that he loves seeing his granddaughter happy. Princess Anastasia has ordered that Ivan be taught swordsmanship by Sir Nayland, the captain of the knights and former teacher of Lisey. After inspecting his good physique, Sir Nayland orders Ivan to run around to test his endurance. While he's doing that, Lisey urges Sir Nayland to meet Aisha, his own granddaughter. The old man is so prideful that he believes Aisha should come and meet him first, which upsets Lisey and reminds him that Aisha would not do so because he is the one who threw her mother out and the young princess is worried about his intentions for coming back. Alexei and Aisha are currently enjoying tea together, and he encourages Aisha to accept at least one tea party invitation, such as the one from the Marchioness Tataricha, who, rumor has it, offers great food, plus she can meet new friends. Aisha declines since she has already made plans to meet with Baron Olga Sarato, her pastry store business partner. Then, Alexei shares that he must see Karnov to make him choose a land as a reward for winning the war. But Aisha is shocked to learn that Karnov is likely going to choose Lina Mushita, a land good for farming, over Lumen Vasilise. Even more shocking to her is the fact that the land of diamonds, Lumen Vasilise, would be given to Marquess Oleg, who doesn't like the Imperial family. Aisha can't just let anyone take over the rich land, making her explode wanting to meet Karnov herself to persuade him. This startled Alexei, so she quickly composes herself and explains she will discuss something with Karnov, so she might as well talk to him about his domain reward. Alexei is pleased to know that Aisha seems to have warmed up to Karnov, so he agrees to let her tell Karnov about the reward. But he is curious as to what they will talk about when they finally meet. She jokes that they would talk about how to fight against his tyranny and reveals that Karnov grumbled about how often Alexei gave him orders, including when he told Karnov to escort her during Aleve's visit. She flushes. However, she learns that Alexei never instructed Karnov, and he freely picked her up at that time. The following day, Pavel pays Aisha a visit in her own kitchen, and they begin baking until a distraught Olga enters. She gives the chocolates Aisha requested and shares that no pastry chef is willing to work with them since it hurts their pride to use someone else's recipe. Our girl is so optimistic and decides to discuss it while having cake and tea. Olga gasps seeing Aisha's tea set since she recognizes it as being made from the famous Mura Ailau, who is known to be a painter but is a genius and a master of all arts. While they are eating, Aisha starts claiming that they do not particularly need a chef, but someone they can learn and trust. She then meets with Karnov, who can now make a flower bloom and requests that she keep his spirit a secret. People may mistakenly believe he can turn back time instead of forward time, and because there are still elves who pose a threat, it is best to maintain his spirit status as a spirit of death, so Aisha has no choice but to agree. Then Aisha asks him a favor, and that is to find someone reliable to work with her, which Karnov tries to refuse at first since everyone he knows are all soldiers. She quickly shoves a picnic bread in his mouth while she explains her plan of opening a patisserie with Olga, and they simply need someone they can trust to share her recipes with. Plus, her cake recipes are simple to make, so no prior baking experience is required. She manages to convince Karnov, and they exchange contacts so he can let her know as soon as he finds someone, while Aisha warns him that her carriage is a cute little chick. Now that that is settled, she then strongly asks him to pick Lumen Vasilise as his land reward and is taken aback when he agrees without hesitation. After their quick meeting, Karnov doesn't waste any time and goes straight to Sophia Schwick to offer her the job. Then they get to Aisha's kitchen, where our girl meets Sophia with a big smile. The two of them begin baking cookies after Aisha briefly explains that she is searching for a pastry chef and wants to see if she's a good fit for the position. After some time, Aisha is overjoyed that Sophia has innate skills in the kitchen because they were able to make some excellent cookies. However, Sophia turns down the offer not because she doesn't want the job, but because she lacks the training to be a pastry chef. And her prosthetic hand could potentially cause problems, especially for the customers. Aisha grabs Sophia's hand and asks if she will ever share her recipe or steal from her shop, which Sophia refuses, only proving that she is the right person for the job. Even Karnov attempts to convince Sophia that she should accept the post, since he believes she would benefit from trying something new. Her vice commander's unexpectedly kind words encourage her to accept the offer, and she expresses gratitude to Aisha for providing her with employment when signing the contract. While waiting to be admitted to the Emperor's office, the Marquess speculates that Karnov wants something in exchange for handing him the rich land, given that he chose a wasteland. Karnov just states that he is doing so because Princess Anastasia has requested it. And just as they enter the office, Marquess Oleg is surprised when the ice-cold Karnov extends his regards to his sick daughter. Meanwhile, Aisha is sighing on her balcony, desperate to leave the palace, and Lisey knows it's to see the opening of Baron Sarato's shop. She is confident Alyosha would grant her permission, but she returns to her room pouting since her cousin will not let her leave alone and even invites her to an opera in the evening, after which they may go check the shop. However, Aisha can't wait until evening, so she goes out to ask the Emperor herself. She begs and pleads with her grandfather until he agrees to let her go, but only on one condition, that she brings a knight with her. Lisey is opposed to having Ivan as her guard, as he is only a trainee, so he proposes that Aisha ask her grandfather, the captain of the knight, to send her a knight, which Aisha flatly refuses because she does not want even the slightest suspicion cast on her that she's attempting to sit on the throne. In the original story, both Karnov and the Crown Prince tried to kill her, and while that is no longer the case, she still can't help but worry. As if he can read Aisha's mind, Phoebe assures her that the people around her are on her side and that she must not allow delusions to take control of her body. This amazes Aisha, but it also gives her the confidence to ask Karnov to accompany her to town. Phoebe refuses to deliver the message, and because the little yellow furball is putting up a fight, she decides to bribe him with cookies. Karnov parents can't believe he's settled in the desolate region of Lumen Vasilise, and he has no plans to explain his decision to them, for who would want to when they all look so terrified of him? Karnov goes to his room and finds Phoebe carrying Aisha's letter with him. Meanwhile, Valery has received a report that his niece, Princess Anastasia, is opening a pastry shop with Baron Sarato. He believes the Baron is attempting to gain the favor of the Imperial family by charming Anastasia. And because the young princess is close to the Crown Prince, he is now assuming that the Baron is siding with the Crown Prince Alexei. He plans to punish the Baron, who is just innocently engaging in a pastry business with our girl. Karnov waits anxiously for Princess Anastasia, who eventually arrives with Lisey, and the three of them make their way to the pastry shop. Meanwhile, Sir Nayland bursts into the Emperor's office shouting, since Aisha never comes to him to take a guard with her. The Emperor explains that their granddaughter chose Karnov as her guard, so there's nothing he can do, and he advises him to see his granddaughter personally if he's curious about her. When Sir Nayland notices that the Emperor sounds so close to Aisha, the Emperor points out that Aisha's father abandoned him when he kicked her mother, so it's only normal that Aisha is resentful toward him. The Emperor also adds that if he apologizes, he's confident Aisha will forgive him, but Sir Nayland seems afraid of his granddaughter's reaction. The Emperor is being all cocky now and teases him that Aisha is never harsh on him. As they get close to the pastry shop, Aisha begins thinking about buying cakes as souvenirs, naming Alyosha and her grandfather. But when Lisey suggests she get one for Sir Nayland Taye, her mom's dad, Aisha refuses, saying that she has never met him and is confident that he will not like her before cutting off further conversation and urging them to hurry. They were all shocked to see so many people outside the shop, and when Lisey offered to investigate, she discovered that everyone was waiting in line to buy the cake, or more accurately, their cake. Lisey also learns that the word about the cake spread widely after a noblewoman, Marchioness Tataricha, tried it and praised it. Since they are customers, they figured they might as well wait in line. After purchasing the cakes, they were about to leave when they heard a woman making a scene. A woman is ranting in front of the pastry shop about the cake, and the staff is attempting to calm her down. Hearing this, Aisha grabs the piece of cake the woman throws and places it right into her mouth to see if the woman is speaking the truth, only to discover that the cake is fine and asks the woman what she is fussing about. Furious, she cries back to the woman, saying that there is nothing weird about the cake and that it was actually incredibly yummy, But the woman claims that the bite she ate tasted like trash and that the shop hired a runaway soldier instead of a pastry chef, which makes the flavor horrible. Karnov realizes the woman is attempting to sabotage the shop and asks how much she's being paid to do so, which shocks her and causes her to run away. Aisha, inside the carriage, is concerned about Sophia's emotional well-being after overhearing the woman complain about her. But Karnov reassures her that the rumor that Sophia ran away is not true and that she shouldn't let it bother her. That night, Lisey assists Aisha in getting ready for the opera. She has been gifted a stunning gown from the crown prince, but she is unsure if it will be too extravagant. The prince comes to get her, and off they go. When the two royals are spotted together, onlookers can't help but make observations. Aisha notices that the chorus members all sing better than the female lead, but she is particularly curious about the lady with brown hair, who really stands out and whom she believes she has seen before but can't remember where. She then turns to Phoebe, asking if he recognizes the woman, and Phoebe yells, claiming that it is the same woman who causes a commotion in front of the pastry shop. Aisha can't believe the singer is the customer who caused a commotion at her pastry shop, so she decides to see the singer after the show, leaving Alyosha behind. Aisha searches for the woman outside the building, while the prince scolds her for leaving without her coat and informs her that he has sent his attendant to summon the woman she's looking for. The woman approaches them, thinking they are the butler who paid her, and that she is now refusing to do that job again, even for more money. But she stops when Aisha confronts her, causing trouble at her pastry shop. The woman denies it, just in time for her son to call her. Aisha soon notices the boy is underdressed for the cold weather and is noticeably skinny. The woman finally shows her face and admits that she has no idea who the butler works for and that she has just done it to support her son financially since her husband abandoned her after discovering she was pregnant. Aisha tosses her glove to her before leaving, and as she's about to return them, the prince stops her, telling her that she can have the gloves with expensive pearls that she can sell for a high price, and asks if the butler has a scar under his right eye, which she confirms. While Phoebe and Aisha are chatting in her kitchen, the emperor comes to visit her. She serves him tea and pancakes and believes that he has already heard everything from Alyosha. The emperor acknowledges that he has heard everything and discovers that his son Valery is behind it. Aisha tells him that Zoya messed up because she has to support her son financially, and he agrees that it's his fault if one of his people is struggling and has to make a poor choice. She then begs him to find Nikki's biological father and get him to pay child support, to which the emperor responds by saying that he will pay Zoya's child support and charge the father for it, because no one would ignore paying their duty to the emperor, which makes Aisha pleased. The emperor feels her heart is so gentle since she isn't thinking about punishing the singer who caused her trouble at her pastry shop, but instead wants to help her. Karnov is aware that the reason Aisha is cooking an excessive amount of pancakes today is because she is feeling down. She denies it, but Karnov is so determined to find out why she's in such a foul mood that he unintentionally bumps his head against hers. She gives in and expresses her disappointment at hearing a negative comment about her desserts for the first time. However, since the singer was hired to comment on Aisha's pastries, Karnov doesn't see why Aisha should take it personally. So to explain, she goes on to say that one falsely negative comment, when spread, might feel as terrible as being stabbed 100 times with a toy sword. Even if Karnov gets her, he is unable to empathize with or console her since he has never been appreciated by anybody. This surprises Aisha, and she tries to convince him that even though many people fear him, others will still admire him because he is a war hero. Karnov makes fun of her for being nice, saying that she must like him that much to make such comments, which makes Aisha blush. Then he shows her a letter that a customer in her shop sent. The sender didn't write his name on the letter, but he says that he is a painter and a traveler. Aisha almost passes out of delight when the sender lavishes so much affection on her chocolate cake and offers to draw her portrait in exchange. They receive a knock and a report that her dress to wear to the tea party that Marchioness Tataricha is hosting has arrived. Karnov is aware that Aisha does not enjoy tea parties and is only going because Tataricha has praised her cakes, which is really spot on, but also because the Marchioness has a daughter the same age. Speaking of the Marchioness, she figures out that Princess Anastasia decided to attend because of her daughter Natalia. She is so worried about her daughter getting into trouble near the princess that she immediately gives instructions for her staff to hide her daughter's toys and grease the trees so she can't climb them. Sounds like a fun kid to me. Aisha is about to start making strawberry tarts for the tea party when she receives a letter from the Emperor and Crown Prince, instructing her to go to the training grounds and select some knights to accompany her to the celebration. Then, she gets a letter from Karnov asking her to wear a cape with a hood to the tea party and letting her know that his grandma is on her way to the palace, so he is away to escort her. Since Karnov is unavailable, she has no choice but to visit her grandfather's turf to select her personal guards. And Marka, the vice captain, rushes to alert Sir Nayland that Princess Anastasia is on her way. He isn't quite ready to meet his granddaughter, and he certainly can't afford to have her see him looking so shabby while Ivan is attempting to avoid the princess by pretending to take the captain's jacket to the laundromat. Aisha is taken aback when she arrives to a very formal greeting from the knights and her grandfather. Since this is their first meeting, she addresses her grandfather formally, earning a sad expression in return. Phoebe suggests she should call him grandfather just like how she calls the emperor, but it is still too awkward for her. She then changes the subject and asks for Ivan as her guard, but her grandfather refuses since he is still not an official knight yet, so she ends up choosing Anne, who is actually Pavel's sister. After Aisha leaves, Ivan arrives and Sir Nayland lashes out his anger at him for not getting chosen by his own granddaughter. Anne is aware that the princess did this for Sir Nayland's benefit. If he were to personally escort the princess, knowing that he is the grandpa and the captain, rumors may start circulating that they intend to seize power. Aisha has picked 2 guards to accompany her, Anne and Bethanic, who appear to be bored but is actually the strongest swordsman, making Sir Nayland happily assert that his granddaughter has a wonderful eye for talent like him. She makes fun of their captain for appearing so proud of his family while he disowned his own daughter. To his defense, he never urged Irina to leave, but he acknowledges that he was furious at her for falling in love with a prince, as this would turn her into a princess and prevent her from remaining a knight. He was against her marriage because she was the most talented knight in the Empire and thought it was a waste of her skills. He then left the room without hearing his daughter's explanation, unaware that shortly afterwards, the crown prince died unexpectedly, and his daughter and Yurye fled together, never speaking again. Karnov escorts his grandma to the Empire, and while they are conversing, she notes that her grandson appears to be enjoying his stay at the palace. He quickly changes the topic and informs her that the emperor is looking for her, and the knights around them are surprised at how nonchalantly his grandma can address the emperor. It looks like the 2 are old buddies. Meanwhile, Aisha is dressed in a cape with a hood as Karnov requested, and is being escorted by the 2 knights along with Lise. When she arrives, the Marchioness welcomes Aisha and thanks her for bringing the strawberry tart for the party. The Marchioness anxiously looks for her daughter, who emerges from the bush. The girl has short hair and unexpectedly is dressed in a formal suit more commonly seen on men. I commend the Marchioness for supporting her daughter's wants. Lady Natalia greets the princess, while Aisha greets her back, complimenting her hairstyle. Then, Aisha is greeted by another noble child, Grisha, but what surprises her is to see her cousin, Dmitri. The Marchioness serves them the strawberry tart she brought with her and lets the children be. No one dared to talk, so Aisha tries to break the ice and urges them to eat the sweets she made. Natalia totally loves it, and even Dmitri starts to gobble it, amazed by how delicious it is. While the other kids are playing, Aisha approaches Dmitri and encourages him to hold his own tea party. But this is unlikely to happen since his father has no desire for any political connections. She then asks if Ilya, their uncle Valeri's son, could throw a party. But Dmitri thinks it's also impossible because Ilya is such a crybaby in public. After Dmitri escapes because Aisha keeps trying to get him to convince their cousin Ilya to hold a party, Lady Natalia invites Aisha to check out her secret base. On their way to Natalia's secret base, Natalia treats her to a snack of berries she picked from climbing a nearby tree. Aisha thinks the fruit is great for making wine, and soon enough, they find themselves in Natalia's run-down but interesting outpost. They go inside, and it's clear that Natalia's mom is really supportive of her, as she even installed a heater in her cabin to keep it warm. She then shares her book full of drawings of leaves and seeds that she collected in the forest, and she is pleased when Aisha shows interest in it and even requests that she show her anything new she finds in exchange for sweets. It is already getting dark, so the servants start to look for them and are surprised to see Natalia sleeping on the princess's lap. After putting Natalia to bed, the Marchioness apologizes to Aisha, but becomes so touched when the princess expresses how much she enjoyed her time with Natalia. Before leaving, Aisha made sure to express her gratitude for the kind feedback she'd given on her chocolate cake, since it gave her so much encouragement after her shop had a scandal. She is now riding in the carriage, sharing the cookies she received from the Marchioness with the knights and even asking Anne to give some to her grandfather. The carriage, however, comes to a halt when word arrives that Karnov is in the area and eager to greet the princess. Aisha goes outside and gives Karnov some of the cookies, while the young guy invites her on a horseback trip to the palace with him. Although Lisey and Anne are watching, Karnov nonetheless puts the princess on his horse and makes sure she's comfortable. He then asks her to lean on him while fixing her hood, which makes Aisha realize that this is why Karnov asked her to wear warm garments all along, because he has already planned their horseback riding. On the way, she happily tells him about her first successful tea party and the shastling berries the Marchioness gave her. She has made a new friend and even talked Dmitri into inviting her to the tea party he's throwing with Ilya. They move on to discuss their spirits, with Karnov having realized the fluffy chick is her spirit and wondering why she has been hiding this fact. Observing Karnov's soft aura, she reveals that she hid her spirit to prevent being perceived as a threat to Alexei, which would make Karnov suspicious of her as well. The two agree to keep their spirits hidden, and while they're at it, Aisha requests that Karnov assist her in making liquor by speeding up the aging process of the wines. Genius! Meanwhile, Dmitri begins to convince Ilya that they should have a party and invite their cousin Aisha. Their fathers are watching them, and Maxim is pleased that his son Dmitri appears to have enjoyed himself at the Marchioness Tatarich's tea party. Valery, on the other hand, believes that because the mother-daughter duo is known to be rather tough, they must have bullied Dmitri. Maxim is now aware that he made a mistake by bringing up Tataricha, as the Marchioness is not on good terms with Valery because of the trouble she caused for his business. Turning the conversation to their brothers, he praises the remarkable talents of Yurie and the late Crown Prince, but both ended up miserable in some way. This is to warn Valery against seeking greater power, but Valery, as usual, ignores his advice. So Maxim lightens the mood, convincing Valery to throw a tea party for Ilya and invite their niece, Aisha. Aisha tries on the dress the Marchioness gave her and decides to wear to Ilya's Karam game party. Alexei compliments her dress and tells her to bring guards, and this time, instead of refusing, our girl gladly accepts. Things have changed, and she is no longer terrified of the Crown Prince or Karnov, which makes her very at ease. However, before Alyosha leaves, he mentions that Ilya's party could end up being rescheduled because her uncle Valery is currently struggling after his breadcrumbs business was forced to close due to bugs discovered in them. Aisha and Olga are currently in the kitchen, and the Baron reports that despite the success of their store, she is worried that the buzz surrounding their products may die down in a few months. Aisha seems unconcerned about the drop in sales and inquires about their chocolate, which is also not selling well since no one knows how to make cakes. Our smart girl has already devised a solution, which is to make their cake recipe public while continuing to sell them in a cupcake version with the recipe instructions. Aisha also mentions that she would like to work with the painter who created their signage again to design their cupcake packaging. Olga is now jotting down everything she said with great enthusiasm, thinking it was a fantastic idea. Now that they are giving away her recipes, Aisha can now sell baking powder, aka Phoebe powder. In the meantime, Alexei and Karnov are sipping tea, and our girl's beloved cousin mentions that Aisha will be attending Ilya's upcoming carom game party. Alexei is concerned that Aisha will be in danger when she's around Valery, so he gives Karnov a bright smile, knowing he has also been invited and should come along to keep an eye on Aisha. Karnov thinks it's tiresome, but boy, he can't hide his blush. Aisha is surprised by the large number of children attending Ilya's tea party and wonders how her uncle Valery can afford to throw such a big party after his business failed. If you ask Phoebe, it is obvious that Valery is trying to cover up his failure. Ilya is hesitant to greet her upon first sight, but is relieved and appreciative of her presence. She greets him as well, and even after Dmitri walks over to join them, because he overhears them joking about him, she continues to tease him. How adorable. Natalia joins them as they're about to enter the mansion and announces that she also knows how to play the carom game, a game in which you use a long cue to strike the balls in order to score points on a large green cloth covered table. Basically like billiards. And our girl is actually a genius in this game. Natalia offers to demonstrate how to do it and cheers for her friend. But when Aisha's turn comes, everyone is taken aback by how perfectly she hits the balls. All eyes are on Aisha, and she ends up winning the game when Karnov arrives, which astounds everyone. She knows Alyosha sent him, so she introduces him to her friends so they don't feel threatened by his presence, and she encourages everyone to play carom together. While they're playing, she sneaks away to deliver her uncle Valery cookies, but Karnov sees her and catches her. She has no choice but to tell him the truth, saying that her cookies can make anyone nice, so she has to give her uncle the snack. Before they could enter the house, Uncle Valery greets them, and looking at them, she asks Phoebe if he really has a prosty in him. Phoebe is surprised that the prosty is deeply rooted in his soul, which causes Aisha concern about the efficacy of her cookies on him. However, Phoebe reassures her that the cookies will work because she has someone who can help her, Karnov. Aisha tells him she wants to meet her uncle personally and hands him the cookies. And fortunately, Aisha's uncle invites him in for tea before they go. She tells him the ingredients of the cookies she made and hopes her uncle will eat them. Karnov starts to grab one cookie as her uncle does too. Aisha watches with pleasure as her uncle Valeri munches on one of her cookies. She then asks Phoebe if her uncle is a good person at heart, to which Phoebe replies that he has always had a bad personality, and that it is the prosty that causes him to act in a malicious manner. As he eats, he compliments how delicious it is, even suggesting that she make cookies as a gift for the Emperor's birthday celebration. Soon after, her uncle departs, and Karnov notes that Valeri does not become nicer, and she explains that it will not work after one time. She needs to keep sending him desserts to weaken and totally remove the prosty. After the party, Aisha asks Karnov to assist her in her kitchen and shows him the shaslings that are completely ripe today. She intends to make a liquor out of it, and she's certain it'll be excellent. When she's done, she asks Karnov to use his power to age the wines to 1, 10, and 30-year-old liquors. But he's hesitant to do it because he's afraid of messing it up. So she holds his hands to reassure him, and when he's done, she's ecstatic because it's the first time she's ever made a liquor that actually smells good. She's about to taste the finished product when she remembers that there's still minors who aren't permitted to consume alcoholic beverages. So she delegates the duty to Pavel and Lisey and plans to give him a bottle to share with his grandma if they say it's delicious. Karnov confronts her, accusing her of taking advantage of him because he did as he was told, and now she's kicking him out without giving him anything in return. But she quickly retorts that she gives him sweet memories of having fun together. And since he shows no sign of emotion, she offers to give him a lime pie or a walk to his house. With a smile, he accepts the pie. Aisha tells Karnov that she will make him a large pie and give it to him along with the liquor, but he wants some kind of token of her promise. She looks around the kitchen but can't think of anything appropriate to give him until he suggests that he will have her hair ribbon as a token of her promise, and she gladly gives him both of her ribbons. Meanwhile, a servant reports to Marquess Valeri that Ilya is pleased and surprised by the large number of guests at his party. The servant also reports that Ilya wants to have another gathering for the carom game, but the Marquess dismisses his request, telling the servant that someone will surely invite his son now that he is closer to the other children, and orders the balls and cues to be thrown away. Marquess Valeri drinks in his room while expressing his rage to his nephew, Alexei, because he believes the latter assists Marquess Tataricha in reporting about the insects in the breadcrumbs he is producing. While thinking about the situation he is in, the thought of Aisha flashes through his mind, and he is surprised why he suddenly thinks of her. Inside Aisha's kitchen, she lets Baron Serato, Pavel, and Lisey test the vodka she'd has prepared. And as they sip it, they are amazed at how good it tastes. And the level rises as the liquor ages. Baron Serato even offers to promote it as a new product, but she declines, explaining that the production process is difficult since sashlings only grow at Marchioness Tataricha's estate, but she does give them each a set of 3 as a gift of appreciation for their support and assistance. Aisha is currently creating her lime pie for Karnov, and she made 2 pies to share with the painter who is going to draw her portrait. But when the painter arrives, he glares at her and refuses to bow, which surprises Aisha. Aisha can't believe the artist actually offered to paint her portrait, given how much he obviously dislikes her. To lighten the mood, Aisha has Lisey serve him tea while she prepares a lime pie for him. And just to be sure, she asks him if he doesn't like anything sour, but the man responds that he likes everything except liars, as if insinuating that Aisha is a liar. He is lucky that Aisha is patient, so she decides to sit down and have a little chat with him. The painter's name is Mayura, and while she appreciates his letter complimenting her cake, she asks him to leave after eating since he clearly doesn't want to paint her. However, Mayura's face changes as he tastes the pie. He can't believe such a little child created it, and he immediately requests that Aisha bake him the famous chocolate cake. When Aisha finally finishes baking it for him, Mayura eats it and immediately apologizes to her on his knees for being disrespectful. He explains that he thought Aisha was lying about being a baker in order to have him paint her a portrait. And then he reveals his true name, the famous Mura Ailau. Now that the issue has been resolved, Mura requests that the princess pose comfortably while he sketches her, and both Aisha and Lisey are surprised by the outcome, considering that it's still incomplete and will take Mura 2 weeks to finish the painting. Aisha then hesitantly makes another request, asking Mura to create a portrait of her grandfather as her birthday present for him. Since this is at Aisha's request specifically, Mura has no choice but to comply. He then finds a draft painting of Aisha's cake, which impresses him with the artist's ability, so Aisha plans to set up a meeting between Mura and their shop painter. Phoebe scolds Aisha that night for being so busy recently that she could pass out at any second. She spends her free time making snacks for Valeri and Ivan to help them get rid of their pastries. She recalls Phoebe saying that the pastries were taken into 5 pieces, and since the pastry appears to be gone from the Noctis elf, there are 2 more pastries left. Then she discovers that Phoebe previously dealt with 1 pastry 10 years ago, making her question where the last one is, but Phoebe can't tell her yet. It's clear that this fluffy bird is a terrible liar since Aisha caught on that he seems to know something, as if he had gone back in time but is now unable to tell her about the future. Now that she thinks about it, Phoebe also mentions that Karnov's spirit is currently weak after using so much power, and her theory tells her it is because it turned back time. If this is the case, she did not reincarnate as a character in a novel, but has actually gone back in time, which is why she has the memories of the real Anastasia. Phoebe cuts her train of thought and yells that she is the real Anastasia, which gives her another theory that there once was a fake Anastasia. The fake must have possessed her body and become the villainess, but before Aisha can ask Phoebe more questions, she finds him on the verge of dying. Phoebe appears to be unable to offer any further information, so Aisha ceases the interrogation and allows him to rest. Our girl basically dropped the bombshell on us all in one sitting. The next morning, she receives Karnov's second letter to express his gratitude for the wine and pie, and this time he includes beautiful blue ribbons as a gift. General Ekaterina, Karnov's grandmother, pays a visit to the Emperor in his office, where she and the Emperor discuss how Sir Nayland has returned as captain of the Empire and is currently instructing a pupil at their granddaughter's request. Speaking of Anastasia, the Emperor receives a word that she's coming to give him cookies. Aisha is surprised that the Emperor has a guest, and though it is her first time seeing the general, she guessed that she is Karnov's grandmother. Ekaterina is startled since they don't resemble each other, but Aisha disagrees since her eyes are so similar to Karnov's. She's about to leave when her grandfather stops her, but he lets her go since he assumes she is busy. Aisha, however, turns the tables, claiming he is the one who's always busy and doesn't even play carom with her. The general smiles as she recalls playing carom with Karnov in the north, prompting Aisha to come up with the brilliant idea of playing carom on the Emperor's birthday. After Aisha leaves, the general wonders if the Emperor thinks the young princess takes after his son, Prince Yurye, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Unlike Aisha, Yurye was actually interested in the throne but passed up his chance to give it to Alexei and decided to flee the palace to bury his yearning. The Emperor believes his granddaughter took after her mother, who's firm about what she wants. The general then discovers that Aisha has a passion for baking desserts, and after tasting the cookies, she is astounded by the sensation a single cookie can provide. Aisha is feeling drained from the summer heat, but she knows exactly the perfect dessert to make, a refreshing sherbet. She plans on giving some of the chilled dessert to each of the knights, but especially to Ivan. The Emperor and Alyosha now trust her, and Sir Nayland's return to the palace doesn't seem to be for bad reasons, so she can go to the training grounds without any worries. The whole training grounds are in a panic after they receive word that Aisha is coming, while Sir Nayland quickly grabs Ivan to make sure he won't run away this time. The princess arrives, bringing the sherbet for everyone to share. The knights praise how perfect the dessert is, but Aisha's attention is on Ivan, who after tasting sherbet, gives off a colored aura. Phoebe believes Ivan is beginning to recognize he has feelings, so it's only a matter of time before the pastry disappears. Aisha wants to make sure that Ivan isn't only training in swordsmanship because she says so, but it turns out that Ivan enjoys it so that one day he'll be strong enough to protect her. Sir Nayland is walking Aisha back to her room, and he is surprised that finally his granddaughter is calling him Grandpa. She bluntly asks why he never comes to see her after returning to the palace, causing him to reveal that he is frightened she will despise him. He didn't care whether others saw him as a threat and merely returned to his position to face her with a respectable title. She then yells at her grandfather for not making more effort to reconcile with her mother, so as a loving granddaughter, she requests that he write his daughter letters as the first step. He's already written a few, so Aisha decides to mail them all to her mother. It turns out that Sir Nayland has been writing letters for Irina but lacks the nerve to actually send them. Aisha is so happy to discover this that she asks her grandpa to carry her to her room. Marquess Oleg is standing in front of the Emperor, pleading for his support for the immigration of farmers to Linam Yushita for flax growing. But he can't focus because Princess Anastasia is sitting on His Majesty's lap while they're talking. He adds that experienced farmers will help to improve the quality of their produce, and the Emperor agrees to facilitate farmer migration. Aisha begs her grandfather to put her down as soon as Marquess Oleg departs. It appears that the Emperor is aware that Sir Nayland carried her in his arms all the way to her room. Grandpa is jealous! Pavel is concerned since he is in charge of the desserts for His Majesty's birthday celebration, since everyone thinks he's the one who made the cake during the elf's visit. To cheer him up, she gives him a whisk and lets him try it himself so he can see how quickly he can make meringue. After trying it, he is pleased with the result and believes that it will open up a whole new world in the kitchen. She adds that it will help him prepare for the banquet and encourages him to work hard to make the best desserts. While she is resting in her room, Lord Mura arrives earlier than expected because he couldn't wait to give her the painting that she is so excited to see. And when she sees it, she's astounded by how beautiful the painting looks, almost as if light is coming through the canvas. They are still talking when the pastry shop signboard painter arrives. She presents herself as Maria, and upon seeing her, Aisha immediately recognizes her as the heroine who will marry Alyosha and the one who will bring the fake Anastasia down. Aisha introduces the two painters to each other, and Maria is startled to know that the man in front of her is none other than Mura Ailau. To see Mura is like a dream come true for her, and she starts getting panicky, making Mura laugh, who explains that it was him who asked Aisha to meet her. Mura admires her cute drawings of the cakes, and just like that, the two click and start obsessing over Aisha's chocolate cake. The celebration for the Emperor's birthday surprised Aisha, as it is more fancier than anything she's seen. Concerned that she hasn't prepared a gift for their grandfather, Dmitri approaches her, and before she can respond, he hands her a brooch that she can offer as a gift. Knowing that Aisha's parents aren't with her, he wants to look after her in their absence. What a cutie! They witness nobles beginning to hand over gifts to the Emperor and Ilya, who has arrived alone. In his father's stead, Ilya offers the Emperor a lavish sword, which he clearly does not like since luxurious things don't amuse him. Then the Emperor receives a winter overcoat from Prince Maxim and his son Dmitri, and Phoebe observes that the brooch Aisha receives is part of the coat set. Phoebe acknowledges that the once arrogant cousin of hers is now trying to protect her, which makes Aisha smile. The Crown Prince and Princess Anastasia stand together to present their gift. Alexei brings out a fig tree that is only known to thrive in the south, but his present is specifically cultivated and bears fruit that is richer in flavor than any other of its kind. When the Emperor sees that Aisha too wants to try the fruit, he laughs as the three of them eat it. The Crown Prince intends to grow the trees in the Empire's greenhouse, which has received praise from the Emperor. Finally, it is time for Aisha to reveal her gift, which everyone is looking forward to seeing. The portrait's realism impresses the Emperor, but the discovery of Mura's signature at the painting's base takes him by complete surprise. Even the nobles can't believe that a 10-year-old drove Mura Ailau, a genius who hasn't painted in a long time, to create an incredible work of art. Aisha shares that she is friends with Mura, prompting the Emperor to recognize her potential after so many people tried and failed to get Mura to paint again. The Emperor considers her gift so valuable that he wishes to grant her a wish, and Aisha gladly accepts his offer. Everyone is now having a good time, except Dmitri, who is alone on the side looking down on himself and thinking that Aisha is truly something. Because even if her parents aren't with her, she ends up surprising the Emperor with her present and doesn't even need his help. Then a servant approaches him and conveys the Emperor's orders to see him. He approaches the Emperor with a stiff gait, fearing a scolding, but it appears that Aisha has already informed the Emperor of the brooch, emphasizing that Dmitri gives it to her in an effort to help her. The Emperor feels Dmitri has accomplished a great deed and wants to give him a wish as a gift. The Emperor, the General, and Aisha will be playing Karam, as promised, but they have invited Maxim, Dmitri, and Karnov to join them. To add to the fun, the Emperor recommends that they have a bet and award it to their winner. The Emperor bet his newly built mansion, making the general wager to take care of the mansion's landscape since her spirit is the spirit of sand, which can govern Earth. Maxim bets to do the interior design. Dmitri bets sugar, and Karnov wagers the wooden knives made only in his domain that are wonderful for cutting cheese and fruits, while Aisha wagers to give the winner her homemade cake. Their wagers are so high that Aisha, the billiards guru, ends up taking them a little bit seriously and winning. The next day, Aisha is having tea with the Emperor, who wishes to host an exhibition of Mura's two paintings. Aisha is embarrassed just thinking about only two paintings during an exhibit, so after learning that there are more Mura's paintings out there, specifically owned by Marchioness Tataricha, Marquess Celestria, Karnov, and Baron Sarato, she plans to borrow all of them, but not for free. She will charge admission fees to all guests and split the profit with the painting owners. As for the location of the event, she's going to use the mansion that she won in the carom game. Her idea is so thorough that the Emperor cannot turn it down. The Emperor then reminds her of the wish he wants to grant her, but Aisha refuses to use her request just yet. It has to do with her pastry shop, but she intends to inform him once the season changes to fall. Well, speaking of seasons, Aisha musters all of her courage to request permission from her grandfather to attend her parents' birthday in the winter. The Emperor does not say anything, leading Aisha to fear that he will not allow her to visit her parents. But she is surprised when he does. Aisha is overjoyed and rushes over to hug the Emperor. The Emperor is at a loss for words, so his spirit, Shamal, advises him to hug back, which he joyfully does. Karnov sends Aisha his third letter, suggesting that he will lend his painting if she lets him look at her portrait first. Aisha has no choice but to let him stare at her portrait, making her really embarrassed. And after he's done looking at it, he gladly lends his painting. Karnov already guessed that she would contact Tataricha and Serato to borrow their paintings. And since she's not close to Marquess Celestria, father of Grisha, the shy boy at the tea party, he offers to help her contact the Marquess. But he wants something in return. A wish ticket with Aisha's signature to promise that she will grant his wish. She initially refuses, saying that she wants to grant his wish right now. But our girl can't really convince Karnov, so she ends up writing a pledge of one wish. She wants to add an expiration date since Karnov might forget to use it, but gets surprised when he wants the wish to be valid for 10 years. Is it to ask her for a date? A marriage? Can't wait to find out. Aisha then meets with the Baron, who shows off the new equipment she bought at a cheap price from Valeri's closed breadcrumb factories. Maria, who has been working on the packaging for their PB powder, has reported that she's nearly done. Olga believes Maria has been working with Mura recently since her painting style has improved. And according to what she has heard, Maria has been staying at Mura's building. While they are talking, Aisha has finished baking her apple tart tatin with whipped cream on top. And Olga is more than happy to devour it. Then, when Aisha inquires as to whether or not she has recently been shopping and purchased Mura's painting, Olga becomes extremely worried and hurriedly apologizes to her. Olga admits that many nobles look down on her simply because she's a merchant. So after their business became successful, she purchased one of Mura's paintings to improve her status. It's not like she did anything wrong, so Aisha calms her down and explains that she merely wants to borrow the painting since she will be hosting an exhibit featuring Lord Mura's paintings. She also plans to make confetti snacks, which are chocolate-covered nuts, as freebies for her exhibit guests. Olga suggests they sell it, but our girl would much rather share it with others. Besides, if people like the chocolate, they may end up buying more of it. Aisha stops by Marchioness Tataricha's home the following day, where she sees Natalia having fun with her ball. She is hesitant to approach Aisha, and when the Marchioness sees the children together, she assumes that her daughter has made a mistake again. Aisha apologizes for coming without notice, and while Natalia changes into a different outfit, her mother makes them tea to go with the dessert Aisha prepared. Marchioness Tataricha asks about the liquor she was given and raves about how tasty it is. Then Aisha begins to reveal the true purpose of her visit, saying that she is curating an exhibition of Lord Mura's paintings and would like to borrow one of her own. However, they are interrupted by Natalia's arrival, and everyone's attention is diverted to the apple tart they are eating, so she doesn't get to hear her answer about the painting. While walking back to her carriage, Aisha interprets the lady's silence on the painting as a form of rejection. But Marchioness Tataricha calls for her before she can leave and tells her that she is willing to lend her the painting but got totally focused on the dessert earlier. Aisha expresses her gratitude to the lady by hugging her. When the servant comes in to announce Karnov's arrival, Aisha is in the middle of preparing her chocolate confetti when the hot syrup splatters all over her. Karnov promptly lifts her and makes her wash her hands, sighing in disbelief that her scream was the first thing he heard upon entering the palace. When her hands begin to flush, they decide to bring in the Imperial physician. Aisha rants about how busy she is, which causes Karnov to perform the stirring portion of her cooking, and wonders what she's making this time. She replies that she's preparing confetti, and she notices his aura changing while they're doing it. After checking, the doctor informs them that it is not a serious burn, and she thanked him and let him leave right away, leaving him surprised and rescuing him from having a difficult time with Karnov. Aisha wonders about Karnov's sudden visit, and she is pleasantly thrilled to learn that he has excellent news for her. After learning that Marquess Celestria will lend his painting for her exhibition, she expresses her gratitude to Karnov. She is relieved that she finally has enough artwork for an exhibition, and now she only needs to figure out how to get people to buy tickets and hand out confetti. She informs him that she is arranging something with Baron Serato, and that when she finishes the exhibit, she will visit her parents, which surprises him because he was unaware of her plans. She explains that she'll tell him once her schedule is set, and she notices his aura changing. thinking he's upset because he doesn't know any of her plans. With a calmer voice, she tells him that she doesn't want to bother him by telling him everything that's going on in her life. And she teases him about starting an exchange diary that he unexpectedly agrees to, which surprises her. Though initially skeptical, she comes around to the idea and decides to do it with Karnov after he offers to bring her a notebook they'll be using. Aisha receives Karnov's 4th letter, telling her that he found a diary and will bring it soon, hoping that she will like it. He also includes a warning asking her not to work hard making confetti, which makes her smile because she can feel the letter's overflowing warm aura, and assumes that Karnov wrote the letter to make her happy. Aisha, Oleg, and Sofia are busy making confetti when Karnov arrives at the shop to pick her up. They return to the palace, where Karnov gives her a notebook and has her place her hand on it, and a beam of light acts as a seal, allowing only the two of them access to it. She finds out that the book is an artifact from the Atrope period, but before she can process this information, he leaves, warning her not to overwork herself. Her exhibit's opening day has arrived, and she is excited. Alyosha arrives to get her, so they may attend together, but she can hear his spirit telling her that Alyosha worked so hard to make time for her, while Phoebe warns him to hold his tongue just once. Aisha can only listen to the two spirits as they keep arguing, and Fafnir stresses how lucky Phoebe is since he can talk to his contractor, making the fluffy bird retort that it was hard to bring Aisha, as if he chose her to be his contractor. Aisha shrugs off the new revelation and informs Alyosha that Fafnir has revealed that he overworked himself just to make time for her exhibit. She adds that he doesn't have to come if he's tired, but Alyosha assures her that he's more than happy and excited to go with her today. She expresses her delight that they will be able to attend the exhibit together, but she is concerned about what will happen when Maria and Alyosha meet. They arrive early, and Alyosha is the first person to check out the exhibit, and he is amazed that Mura's paintings are all in one area. After that, Mura and Maria's arrival is announced because Mura is impatient to get his hands on Aisha's confetti snack. Mura gives Alyosha a formal introduction and mentions that this isn't the first time the two have met. The young, empty prince he previously met was nothing like the confident young man he sees now, and Alyosha is overjoyed to share that Aisha is to credit for everything. Aisha then presents Maria to Alyosha, but unlike what she had anticipated, there are no sparks between the two. The guests are let in at last, and they immediately begin crowding around Mura to have a chat. Aisha then summons Cyril, the crown prince's personal guard, and orders him to take Alyosha back to the palace. The crown prince insists on staying, but then gives up after Aisha makes him feel guilty that he needs to rest in order to become a decent emperor. Aisha is waiting for Karnov, but she runs into her uncle Valery and Ilya first, so she greets and invites them in. When she tries to lead her uncle to the paintings, he scolds her for holding him, but then eventually lets her be when she grabs his arm to escort him. Phoebe believes Valery has eaten all of the desserts she has sent him since his prostai has weakened significantly. Aisha grins as she notices progress, but she's taken aback when her uncle suddenly begins emitting a sinister aura. That's because the Marchioness Tataricha, his arch-enemy, is there to welcome him. Although the Marchioness is impressed by Aisha's snack, our girl is starting to feel uneasy because the atmosphere has changed now that the two are facing each other. They somehow survive, and Aisha and her uncle are now looking at the portrait of the Emperor. Valery refuses to take her snack, but after Aisha informs him that the Emperor ate a lot of it, he snatches her snack basket and begins nibbling. His aura finally brightens, and he starts chatting with Aisha, assuming that she invited him to the exhibit to embarrass him. She asks him sarcastically if he expects her to publicly shame him for paying Zoya to insult her cake. Aisha has gotten over it now since her uncle already earned his karma, and by that, she means the downfall of his breadcrumbs factory at the hands of the Marchioness. Aisha wants him to know that she simply invited him because he is her uncle. Plus, she wants to see Ilya. The two cousins plan to play carom again, and after a while, her uncle and Ilya said their goodbyes. It all works out in the end. Thank goodness. Karnov then greets her, having arrived at the same time as Valery, but choosing not to disrupt her from beating up her uncle. It is now time for them to go home, but she discovers that her carriage is gone, probably used by the crown prince earlier. So she tries plan B, which is to borrow Karnov's carriage, only to be lightly poked in the head while Karnov informs her that he came alone riding his horse. Now it's time for plan C, which is to get them another carriage, which somewhat displeases Karnov given that she can simply ride horseback with him. She is just concerned about Lisey, but Karnov believes it is a simple fix because they can simply borrow another horse for Lisey. They're arguing like an old married couple, and it's hilarious to watch. Aisha eventually gives up and agrees to go along for the ride with Karnov. They're on their way now, and Karnov advises the dozing Aisha that after her 2-week exhibit, she should bring knights with her during her visit to her parents. However, she objects to being escorted by guards, leaving Karnov no choice but to accompany her himself. To justify his decision, he claims that because her father, Prince Yurye, has always been the Emperor's choice as his successor, he wants to see if he poses a threat to Alexei. If this is the old Aisha, she will overanalyze the situation, but after getting to know Karnov, she knows he is lying. He can't believe Aisha is suspicious of his intentions, as if assuming that he'll accompany her due to romantic feelings. Karnov is taken aback when Aisha tells him straight out that she had believed he liked her and worried about her at first. But that isn't the case now that he has brought it up. She doesn't bother waiting for an answer from Karnov before agreeing to take him for whatever motives he may have, and dismounting from his horse now that they are so close to the palace. Baron Oleg reads the flattering article about Aisha's exhibition and congratulates her on her accomplishment. Oleg then shows her the sample packaging of their PB powder, and Aisha finds it really pretty. However, the design features an angel illustration that looks strikingly similar to her, making her really embarrassed. Aisha believes Oleg's face should be on it, but the Baron reminds her that she is the one who trusted Maria, a nameless painter, and it is only fair that she be the face of the product. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!